Good evening and welcome to the Dana Point City Council meeting of Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. Madam Clerk, will you please provide the roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All members of the council are present.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Attorney, is there a need for a closed session?
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor. We have a conference with legal counsel this evening as a result of anticipated litigation due to the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. We have one case to discuss. We also have a report on our unlicensed residential recovery facilities litigation. It involves a conference with legal counsel as a result of existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. We have 15 cases to discuss this evening. First is City of Dana Point versus Sobertech LLC, Orange County Superior Court case number 302016008594437. Next is City of Dana Point versus Capital by the Sea, Orange County Superior Court case number 302016008594260. Next is City of Dana Point versus Lumens Healthcare Group, Orange County Superior Court case number 302016008904881. Next is City of Dana Point versus Sunshine Behavioral Health, Orange County Superior Court case number 302017009048184. Next is City of Dana Point versus New Method Wellness Inc. Et al. Orange County Superior Court case number 2017009044169. Next is City of Dana Point versus Donna House LLC, Orange County Superior Court case number 302018009666527. Next is City of Dana Point versus Ocean Hills Recovery Inc., Orange County Superior Court case number 302018009666532. Next is City of Dana Point versus Sovereign Health, Orange County Superior Court case number 302018009665557. Next is City of Dana Point versus 12 South Recovery, Orange County Superior Court case number 302018009666539. Next is City of Dana Point versus Mainstream Group et al., Orange County Superior Court case number 302018010111128. Next is City of Dana Point versus Sanctuary House Recovery et al., Orange County Superior Court case number 2018010111154. Next is City of Dana Point versus Happy Destiny Foundation Inc. et al., Orange County Superior Court case number 302018010111176. Next is City of Dana Point versus Donna House LLC et al. It's a second Donna House case, different case number. This is Orange County Superior Court case number 302018010111653. Next is City of Dana Point versus New Life Treatment and Addiction Center et al., Orange County Superior Court case number 302018010111481. Next is City of Dana Point versus Southern California Recovery Center et al., Orange County Superior Court case number 3020180101275. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. With that, we are in recess to close session until 6 p.m.
May we never forget what an honor that is. I thank you, God, for the commitment of each City Council member here this evening. May efficiency, wisdom, and cooperation prevail as the items on the consent calendar are proposed. I thank you for the democratic freedom we have as members of the public to come before the City Council. We place our trust in their professionalism, expertise, and respect for this community and its members. I pray specifically for the city's law enforcement officers and ask that you watch over and protect them as they continue to serve and protect the city of Dana Point. And I thank you, God, for the volunteers in policing and the Daughters of the American Revolution that are being recognized here tonight for their outstanding service. We welcome your presence and your peace here with us now. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay. We will now turn to the presentations and proclamations portion of our agenda. And tonight, first, we have a presentation by the Daughters of the American Revolution. I understood that we had 2 representatives, but there was only one.
I don't know where Sharon is.
Okay.
I'm all alone.
Well, if I could ask you, Mary Lou Rodermel,
Rottermill?
I apologize. If you would please step up to the podium and tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
what you have.
All right. Daughters of the American Revolution is a long lasting, long enduring group of people. We are related to ancestors who fought or supported the freedom fighters in one way or another. I didn't expect to talk. Okay. All right. In 1787, this great document, the U.S. Constitution, was signed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, September 17th. And listen very carefully on September 17th at 1 p.m. because bells will be ringing in honor of the Constitution. And it's a wonderful thing for you to wave your flag, to present your flag that day or for the following 6 days because we are celebrating it for 1 week. Back in the 50s, DAR persuaded President Eisenhower to commemorate this great event, and he did, and it has been a yearly occurrence, September 17th, and teachers of all age levels are directed to teach their children something about the U.S. Constitution on that day. I taught kindergarten for many years, and it was a bit of a challenge to break down what the Constitution was, but I did what I could, and I think they came away remembering we the people of the United States, and they memorized the preamble. So thank you.
Good. Don't go away. I have a presentation for you. The city has a proclamation for you in honor of Constitution Week. So let me read it and present it to you. The Proclamation for Constitution Week, September 17th to the 23rd, 2018. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law, and whereas September 17th, 2018 marks the 231st anniversary of the signing of the Constitution of the United States of America, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this memorable anniversary and to the patriotic exercises that will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. And now, therefore, I, Richard Vicsoric, Mayor of the City of Dana Point, California, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through September 23rd, 2018, as Constitution Week in the City of Dana Point, and urge all citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Dated this 4th day of September, 2018. Okay, the next presentation we have is to honor our volunteers in police services. And before we do that, I guess I'd like to start by asking our Chief of Police Services, Lieutenant Sheehan, to give a brief presentation.
Thank you very much. Tonight we'll be honoring two of our awesome volunteers. Just so you folks know, the things that go on in a police station require a great deal of assistance oftentimes. When the deputies are out handling those calls, someone has to be around to help us out with talking to folks at the counter or helping us pick things up, retrieve them from other stations, transport vehicles, all of those things that we take for granted on a day-to-day basis in a police station. We have awesome volunteers that help us out with. We have about 15 active volunteers currently in Dana Point. That number fluctuates, but we're always recruiting more. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to speak with myself or Jill or Janik or any of the other Sheriff's Department personnel. These volunteers save us approximately $120,000 in yearly savings. And they volunteered over 4,600 voluntary hours in 2017 alone. Some of the duties that they assist us with are front counter assistance. They do a bike patrol, although we're only down, I think we only have one remaining bike patrol volunteer. So far, we're still recruiting for more, and they help with vacation checks, things like that, that frees up the deputies for other calls for service. They do a van patrol, and they assist us on all of our special events. If you notice the two volunteers that we have here tonight, I'm sure you've seen them at the Festival of the Whales or Turkey Trot or Doheny, Ohana, you name it, they volunteer their time at it. Manny was there, as well as his beautiful wife, on the 4th of July for us. The first volunteer we would like to honor is Dr. William Bill Barcroft, and he started with the VIPS program in 2009. He's been with us for over 6,300 hours of service and is currently working Monday and Tuesday mornings at the front counter. He's a life coach and a chaplain and has a PhD in psychology, so he's constantly analyzing me. He's got lots of notes. If anybody's curious, I'm still here, so thanks, Doc. And we're also honoring Manny Gerardo. He started with a VIPS program back in 2010, and he's volunteered over 5,000 hours of service. He's currently working Tuesdays and Fridays at the front counter and all the special events in the city, so I've gotten to know Manny quite well. He's also a former volunteer for LA County Sheriff's Department. And a little tip about Manny is he also volunteers for TIP. And I recently had a loss in my close network of friends, and Manny was the TIP volunteer who came and took care of all the family members who were really, really struggling. And he was irreplaceable that night. He worked miracles, and I'd like to personally thank you for that. So tonight, these are the gentlemen that we're honoring.
Thank you.
You want me up there?
Please come. Yes. All right, good. Bill and Manny, please join us up here. Okay. The city does have some proclamations for our volunteers, and just to tack on to what Lieutenant Sheehan said, I mean, these individuals do so much for the community. I mean, they augment our police services, allowing our deputies to do things that they wouldn't otherwise have the time to do. And so what you do by volunteering your time for our community is so appreciated. So we're glad to have you here, and I'm honored to present you with these proclamations. So if I could, Manny, I'll start with you. I've got your proclamation. I will read yours first. Proclamation for Manny Gerardo. Whereas Manny Gerardo has been a dedicated volunteer in police services in Dana Point since 2010, volunteering over 5,000 hours of service. And whereas Manny currently works Tuesday and Friday at the front counter in police services, as well as all special events in the city. And whereas Manny formerly volunteered for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department before serving the city of Dana Point, Manny is the first point in contact with citizens and visitors to police services, offering valuable assistance to the public. And whereas Manny currently volunteers with TIP, as mentioned, the Trauma Intervention Program, and plays a big role in this organization, and whereas throughout the years, Manny has worked tirelessly to provide professional and caring services to the public when they come to the front desk or via telephone, and whereas with his positive attitude and professional and friendly demeanor, Manny's a great ambassador for Dana Point Police Services while volunteering at special events in the city and has earned the respect and admiration of the Dana Point City Council city staff, and members of the public. And now therefore, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of Dana Point, I, Richard A. Vixoric, Mayor, hereby express heartfelt appreciation for his invaluable contributions to our community and for his many years of dedicated public service. Thank you. Thank you. Now we have a proclamation for Dr. William Bill Barcroft. Whereas Bill Barcroft has been a dedicated volunteer in police services in Dana Point since 2009, volunteering over 6,300 hours of service. And whereas Bill currently works Monday and Tuesday mornings at the front counter in police services, and whereas Bill holds a PhD in psychology, Bill is the first point in contact with citizens and visitors to police services, using his skills as a life coach and chaplain to provide valuable assistance to the public. And whereas throughout the years, Bill has worked tirelessly to provide professional and caring services to the public when they come to the front desk or via telephone, and whereas with his positive attitude and professional and friendly demeanor, Bill has earned the respect and admiration of the Dana Point City Council, city staff, and members of the public. And now therefore, on behalf of the City Council, the citizens of Dana Point, I, Richard A. Vixoric, Mayor, hereby express heartfelt appreciation for his invaluable contributions to our community and for his many years of dedicated public service. Thank you. I suppose I would be remiss if I didn't give you gentlemen an opportunity to speak while we're here. Would you like to say anything? If not, that's okay.
All I can say is thank you very much, and we do it proudly. And I'll tell you what, as senior citizens, we enjoy the opportunity to know that we're still valued and that we still have something to contribute, even at our age. Right, Bill?
Amen, yes. And thank you again for the privilege. It's an honor and privilege to serve. And every day at that front desk, it's continuous education. I learn a lot there.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. We really appreciate it. Okay, we'll now move on to the reading of the ordinance titles. At this time, the city clerk will read the titles of the ordinances listed on the agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 3 second reading and adoptions this evening. First one is item number 10. It reads as a second reading and adoption of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Dana Point, California, amending Title 8, Building and Construction of the Municipal Code to add 1. Section 8.22.019, expediting permitting processes for residential rooftop solar, photovoltaic installations, and 2. Chapter 8.33, expedited electric vehicle charging station permitting. Item number 11 is another second reading and adoption of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Dana Point, California, amending Dana Point Municipal Code, Title 11, Peace, Morals, and Safety, and Title 13, Parks and Recreation Facilities, to clarify and amend the city's regulations relating to public nuisances behavior. Lastly, item number 12 is a second reading and adoption of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Dana Point, California, amending chapters 14.01 Streets and Sidewalks of the Dana Point Municipal Code. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the consent calendar portion of the agenda. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine, and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, are there any items to be removed by the public?
I have one item, item number 10.
Item number 10. Mr. City Manager, are there any items to be removed by staff?
No, sir.
Are there any items to be removed by council? No. Very well. Okay, I will move the balance of the consent calendar, the recommended actions.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Very well. It brings us to item 10, which is the second reading of an ordinance of the City Council of Dana Point, amending Title 8, the Building and Construction of the Municipal Code to add Section 8.22.019, expediting permitting processing for residential rooftop solar photovoltaic installations, and Chapter 8.33, expedited electric vehicle charging station permitting. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
We don't have a staff report, but Matt Schneider is available if the council has any questions.
Very well. I will now open up the public comments. We have one speaker, Mr. Rick Erkeneff.
Good evening, Rick Erkeneff. Today I'm wearing the Surfrider Foundation South Orange County Chapter Chairman hat. I'd like to thank you guys for hopefully passing this on a second reading tonight. I think it's a very important ordinance. Our chapter, a week from tomorrow night, Wednesday, September 12th, from 6 to 8 p.m., we're hosting a community meeting at the Dana Hills Tennis Center, just up the street, the Water District property. We have a complimentary dinner and refreshments for anybody that would like to RSVP to that, and it is titled the Surfrider Solar Experience. Surfrider Foundation's San Diego chapter has partnered with Sullivan Solar Power, which is a large solar power provider in California and elsewhere, and the Climate Action Campaign. And I can assure you this isn't a sales pitch to put solar panels on a roof, but more informational. We're going to have experts in renewable energy in California, obviously talk a little bit about policies that are being made in Sacramento. And then, like I said, it's great to see this council moving to where these type of permitting can be expedited. And again, it's just learning about latest technology and specifically the community choice energy options. Now, this is something that will be, most likely years, if not decades out, but, being an early adopter as the city is, hopefully we'll be, as a city, as a region, be able to move towards that. So I have a flyer that announces this. I'll give it to the clerk, and then hopefully maybe some city staff and again, council folk and the public are all open to coming to that meeting. And again, it's September 12th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Tennis Center, just up Golden Lantern, and I hope to see quite a few people come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Erkeneff. With that, I will close the public comments on this item, bring it back to council. I will move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I think it's a great idea. I currently use solar panels and electric charging stations at some of my buildings. So I think it is the wave of the future, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with this and making it easier for people to do so.
Thank you, Councilman Tomlinson. Any other comments? No? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. That brings us to the end of the consent calendar and to the public comments portion of our meeting. There will be a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for this public comments portion of the agenda. At the mayor's discretion, the balance of public comments will be heard after the new business portion of the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the city council and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the city council from taking action on a specific item unless it appears on the posted agenda. The city clerk will distribute any handouts you may have, and if you would please state your name and your city of residence for the record when you speak. And I see, Madam Clerk, we have 3 comments tonight. 3 speakers. Our first speaker tonight is Penny Maynard, followed by Wayne Yost and Nancy Jenkins.
Penny Maynard, Dana Point. Mayor Versorek, Mayor Pro Tem Miller, and Dana Point City Council. I'm here to say more about adding beach to the name of the city of Dana Point. At the last council meeting, I said there were 8 beaches in Dana Point, and I was sort of challenged on that because they were under the jurisdiction of county, but which I was aware of, but not all of them. We actually have one at the Ocean Institute where the tide pools are located, and it's under the city of Dana Point's jurisdiction. Nevertheless, when visitors hear about Dana Point, although it's the Dana Point Harbor that comes to mind, of our beautiful beaches come to mind. This includes Doheny Beach, which is a state beach. There is a beach in Capistrano Beach area of Dana Point, beaches in Monmouth Beach area of Dana Point, and many beaches in the remaining area of Dana Point. Also, Dana Point is known as a beach community. And I know that most residents of Dana Point, when telling people where they reside, will say, I live in the beach community of Dana Point between Laguna Beach and San Clemente. For residents who are not supportive of adding beach to the name of the city of Dana Point, I ask the residents of both Capistrano Beach and Monarch Beach, both areas of Dana Point, to just say they live in Dana Point. Take the beach out of it completely, since both of these areas are in Dana Point. But if beach is good enough for Monarch Beach as an enhancement and Capistrano Beach as an enhancement, each parts of Dana Point, then adding beach to our city's name wouldn't leave Dana Point out. In addition to increasing revenue to the city's TOT from tourism and increasing property values, it is something that other California communities have done to grow their bottom line. Realtors will love this, and I've already spoken to quite a few of them. And I'm sure even Patty Short and Gary McCretis will like my proposal. And I plan to continue promoting adding beach to the city of Dana Point, and I will continue to be at meetings to spread the word. I've already received support for adding beach, and for anyone who wants to join me in moving forward, I welcome you. Also, breaking news, Patriots, New England Patriots. The 41-year-old on their roster has made the cut. and if all this doesn't work, it can go on the ballot in 2020, and I'll be working to make it happen. That's all I can say. Thank you so much, all of you, and I will be back.
Thank you, Ms. Maynard. Our next speaker is Wayne Yost.
Good evening, Wayne Yost, 36-year resident, Dana Point. Mr. Mayor, City Council, staff, members of our community. I want to start off, first of all, by saying thanks to all of you for a great summer. It was cultural, it was educational, it was entertainment. We've got the whole package, and all of you made it happen. Thanks so much for your support and for making the citizens of Dana Point very proud of the city that they live in. On a different note, as all of you know, the number one issue concerning our citizens is the homeless issues that we have throughout Dana Point. A lot of people have expressed to me their dismay that our Dana Point Homeless Task Force was disbanded. And I attempted to tell them that the mandate that we were given by the City Council to supply a report to you and make recommendations was successful, that the City Council adopted them and was implementing them almost to a letter. They still don't understand why we've abandoned the Homeless Task Force. Therefore, I'm requesting that you agendize in the near future reinvigorating the task force, not as a committee appointed directly by the City Council, but supported by the city. As the commander of the VFW, I would be proud to take the lead in that. I would welcome the assistance of Paul Wyatt and Kelly Reynes and some of the other people who so eloquently helped us establish and put forth that task force, and I'd love to have their input. But rather than expending city funds on staff hours and reports and things like that, I would just like to have an accumulation of the stakeholders, the service providers, and have regularly agendized meetings with them so that we can not only discuss the state of affairs as far as dealing with our homeless people, but what new services might be available and introduced in the city, and would give us a chance to network together, coordinate our efforts to make sure, number one, that we're not duplicating a lot of things, and number two, that there are no gaps being left where they should be filled so we can service those who need our help the most. And if you have any questions, you all know how to get in touch with me, and I'd welcome any recommendations that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yost. Our last speaker is Nancy Jenkins.
My name is Nancy Jenkins. I'm a resident of Dana Point. I'm here tonight to say thank you both to the city staff and to the council for your support in the 2018 Art Fest. We haven't had too many meetings between then. Jack Loconsola was unable to attend, so I am representing the committee. This is a committee endeavor. It is made up of Del Prado businesses, artists. We have 4 or 5 artists on the committee. We have 2 community members, and there are 2 of us, myself and Karen Schnell, who is here tonight, represent the Arts and Culture Commission. To expand the event, every year we want to make it better and a little different. This year, we wanted to work on the title Art Fest. So we had an artist by the name of Tom Clark who did his actual painting there of murals. And maybe if you were there, you saw it. He said, the only problem with it is everybody comes up and has talked to me, and I know them. But he only did 4 huge murals. Well, 3 of them are hanging on Raintree. And the other one has disappeared, and Tom laughed. He said, that's the best compliment if somebody will come and take your artwork. And so in this regard, we wanted you to receive a memorandum of our appreciation. And I have it right here, that we are presenting you a replica of the 4th one that was on the wall, and it says, Go Dana Point. And this is for the city, and I hope it hangs in a very prominent place. And so I'll give it to Kathy Ward as the city clerk.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much, Ms. Jenkins.
And so that's a limited edition, so take good care of it. In particular, I want to say 3 other things. I want to say thank you to Mike, for the city staff, to Mike Killebrew, who attended many of our meetings and would say, well, have you ever thought about doing this? And he has a plethora of ideas, and he helped to enrich our event. And then also I want to thank Councilwoman Lewis. I was at the City Council meeting right after the event, and you made a report, having attended the event, and you said that we have our own niche of art. We don't have to follow Laguna Beach. And you were talking how you made some contacts to have further classes in doing that. And our next event will be next year, and it's tentatively scheduled to be and coincide with the beginning of the trolley, because we think that helped because we had over 3,000 people attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. With that, I will close the public comments and move on to the next section of the agenda, which is council reports. And we'll go around the horn and ask if we have council reports. Councilman Tomlinson?
I have nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Wyatt?
I have turned in my list of meetings to the city clerk, and I have nothing else to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis?
No, other than I enjoyed the time off, was able to be with my grandkids and my kids, and so nothing to report on the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. When Mr. Yost came up and spoke about reinventing this task force. Since the city's not sponsoring it, is that something we would have to act on to do, or could he do that from the outside and then ask us for some input?
Mr. Yost and I have had a very brief conversation this afternoon about this idea, and so we've scheduled time to get together this coming Friday to explore that a little bit further. So we'll be doing that, and we can report back to your council if so desired.
Okay, thanks. Okay, with that, I'd like to report the OC Fire Authority has hired a new fire chief. I'm sure you're all aware of that, Chief Brian Fennessy. And one of the very first things we tasked him with was working with the OC Sheriff's Department and solving this issue we had with our helicopters and who's going to have responsibility for air coverage. And it just shows, it was very contentious before he came on. And Chair Sachs and myself as vice chair, our directive to the new chief was, you need to resolve this quickly. And he did that. And that just shows when you take leadership and you bring it together and you say, you're going to solve this problem, not being a firefighter or a public safety professional, that's not really up to us as leaders to get in there and say, this is how it's going to happen. So we got the two leaders together and our staff, and they did a fantastic job. And it was about 2 weeks ago, we had our press conference announcing the agreement that we have, and Orange County residents are all the better for it. Your coverage is going to be much greater. We have more coverage on our fire. And I just want to say thank you to Chief Fennessy and Sheriff Hutchins for all their great work on this, and the Orange County Fire staff that was involved, and the Orange County Sheriff's Department staff that was involved. I'd also like to remember and remind people we've had an extremely deadly fire season this year. In the last 30 days, we lost 6 firefighters across the state. And what most people don't understand, when we lose a firefighter, everybody thinks it's the smoke jumpers, they're down. We have a lot of bulldozer operators out there. All right, they're up on cliffs, they're doing things, they're trying to cut fire lines in extremely dangerous places. And I want to say, I think 4 of the firefighters that died were dozer operators and rollovers. They do this at night in the middle of a fire. And just think about teetering on an edge of a cliff, trying to cut a fire line at night when you can't see anything. These are true heroes. They don't get enough recognition, so I'd just like to remember them as we go through our meeting tonight. And that's my reports, and I've turned in my list of meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing to report, and I've turned in my list of meetings to the city clerk. So let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is new business. Item number 13, which is the Arts and Culture Commission interviews. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Clerk Kathy Ward is going to take the lead on this item tonight. Kathy?
Thank you, City Manager and City Council. So this evening, we have, before you, I placed the interview schedule in which we have 4 applications that are here this evening, and they've all checked in, so I know they're all here. What we'd like to do is, once you're ready to interview them, send them to the podium as we always do. And then when they're complete, when all the interviews are complete, you also have ballots at your workstation there at the dais. And when you're ready to vote on them, we'll go ahead and have you vote for one person, since this is one position replacement. And then also, I will pick up the ballots and I will read them to you. And what we're looking for is a majority, which is at least 3 votes from the council. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, what we will do is we'll start our interviews of the candidates for the Arts and Culture Commission. And we have we'll just call them in order as they're listed. And what I'd like to do is simply ask you to come up, say a few words about yourself, why you're interested in the position, and then if any of the city council members would like to ask you questions, we will then follow that up with questions. So we'll start with our first candidate is Miss Loretta Crippen.
Good evening. I actually go by the name Kay.
Oh.
I don't know if that's clear. I was using a computer at the library since I've just returned to Dana Point about 1 month ago. So I'm very happy. I come here every year. I have a house here since 1982. And I was transferred here when I worked at DuPont. And I chose Dana Point, which was the best decision I've ever made. And I'm very pleased to see the growth of the city and the village, the Lantern Village sign as you go down into the main part of town is one of the most impactful things. You know, my friends in Laguna, people who come here really see a difference in the city. And so I just finished teaching at the University of Arkansas, HBCU, and I retired because the tax laws changed. And I was working in rural poverty in Arkansas, and I was on the Board of Trustees for the Arts and Science Center located in that town. It had a theater. They had music live on Friday once a month, and they supported activities. So I placed interns there, but I got involved with their tinkering workshops, which is related to what they call the maker movement in arts. And I teach university students who were sometimes less than enthusiastic with my textile science classes. And so I really have incorporated that into my philosophy. Whenever, you know, we were doing art lectures down there, we had to have an activity that went with it. So there's been a lot of focus on how you present art and how you involve people in that art. And so those are some of the things that I'm really interested in. I grew up in rural Indiana, and there were no art museums. But our 4-H did go to Chicago. So the Field Museum was my first art experience. And my first opera was Carmen outdoors. And so I made sure wherever I was, I went to art museums and participated. So I've traveled all over. I lived in Asia for 10 years, and I was on a research permit in Indonesia where I studied a specific type of textile in the village. So I've had a diverse background in arts, and I would welcome the opportunity to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open up to questions from the council. Are there any? Councilman Wyatt?
Sure. Thank you, and thank you for coming and offering to help. So, you've been away for a while, but you've known the city for a long time. So, I was just curious on what ideas you have that think we could do that really would take some of your ideas and bring them home.
Well, I think, you know, you'd want to look continuing what you're doing in the Arts Festival, making it your own. I look at the festival that I'll be going to, the Tall Ships, soon, and that is just like a world-class event to me. When those ships sail around at sunset, you can't get any better. So, you know, make things, small incremental improvements, and then also look at new things. I don't know for sure if you're doing this, but in Arkansas, we had the Ozark Folk Center, we had Eureka Springs, and they had artist in residence, places that artists could go, writers, artists. I was going to apply for it. Reduced cost housing. You could go for a week and stay. Also focusing more on the artists that you have within the community, and I'm sure you've done some of that. Expanding it, and I would love to see a community activity that would involve a maker space, if that's a possibility. I've written lots of research proposals for money, and when towns like Pine Bluff, Arkansas can get a huge theater and a big event, you know, I think the city should look at where they really want to go with having a reflection in arts, because we have tourists coming. The weather is wonderful. We have themes that relate to art, the ocean, the whales, the surfers, and my area of research was sustainability, which ties into art now. So those are a few of the things that I think of, but I think the committee and the city council has to decide what big of a vision they really want to do. But with more tourists coming, you know, it was always, well, what do we do now? We've done this, we've done this, we've done this. So it seems like a logical extension would be to look at some additional art activities that both residents, youth, and tourists could be involved with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis, any questions?
No, I have no questions, but I want to say thank you so much for volunteering and your impressive background and bringing that here to our arts and culture. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may have answered this because that was a pretty in-depth answer to Mr. White's question, but what role do you see arts and culture, the committee, playing in local government?
Well, I saw that it was an advisory committee, I believe, and I think that they would give recommendations to the city council, and then in addition, I believe there are certain activities that they've been involved with, and carrying those activities, such as the Art Fest, to fruition.
Okay, I guess a follow-up to that is, what type of value do you see for a city if we continue on with this?
The value of the
Arts and Culture Commission.
Well, citizens like to participate in arts. I used to be, would attend some of the art things they would have on the Friday nights. And then I think tourists find it, you know, instead of driving out of town to go do something, that more activities that are in the area, the more tourists you capture, you know, you add value to their experience. I was just telling my physician's nurse, I guess she's a receptionist, about the Ocean Institute educational programs. And she was willing to bring her grandson here for a vacation because he wants to be an oceanographer, he thinks. So I could see tremendous benefits. I think Laguna Beach has seen tremendous benefits from their art position. But arts have become more popular as we have more leisure time. And there's several ways to define arts. It can be performing arts. It can be, you know, the participatory type. And I also see that some of the youth would like to be more involved with that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have one question I want to ask you about your time in Singapore. And full disclosure, I've been to Singapore, but I haven't been there for over 20 years. And I noticed you mentioned that that they've been able to grow tourism through the use of arts in Singapore, and that there really wasn't much to do there before that. And I can attest to that. There wasn't much to do there. Now, what I want to ask you is, having that experience, do you see similarities between what went on in Singapore with your experience and Dana Point, or do you see differences that you would be able to adjust or adapt to? How would you apply that experience here in Dana Point?
I'll just say a couple of things. First of all, you know, shopping was the only thing you could do. So they did it for two reasons. They wanted their citizens to be happier, and that worked really well. They invested a lot of money. They have really redone things, and Singapore moves fast, you know, because they don't have the same processes for checks and balances that we do. They built the boat quay like that. It was done. So they can move very fast, but I think it really showed me the possibilities of what can be done. And I visited several museums, maybe 4 or 5, the last time I was back in 2014, and they were crowded, packed. They did specialty museums. They took old buildings, rehabbed them, And if you have ever heard of a Peranakan, it's a Chinese male who went to Southeast Asia, married Malay or Indonesian women. They have a museum that covers that culture. So they did some specialty. I think the city should try to look toward, what could be possible that would give Dana Point more recognition in the arts. It may not be anything related to Singapore. I was in Indonesia too, and they had all kind of little museums as well as the big national museums. And they maintained those small museums pretty well. I was amazed, because their budgets were minuscule. So I just feel that I'm not saying you have to build something right away. What I'm really saying is I think Dana Point should look at where they want to go with this and how big they want it to do, and maybe have a stage-wise, progression. Start here and then, expand it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thank you for coming in.
Okay, you're welcome.
Our next candidate tonight is Joanne Christman.
Good evening. I don't know if I'm prepared to be questioned like that. I've lived in Dana Point for a long, long time, and I've seen it grown from a little tiny town to what it is now, which is great and getting greater. And that's my thing. I would like to continue all the programs we have now because we have something for everybody. Little children, oh yes, adults, and my suggestion would be a city gallery. I think we need that, and that would be either city or at least a partnership with a group. I think that would be a value, and I don't know, questions?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I didn't say what I could do.
Right.
Well, I could be dependable, and I try to listen to all sides of the issue before decision. Former school teacher, you learn to listen, you learn to talk to. I don't do the talking very well, but questions?
Okay, thank you. We'll go around the horn. Councilman Tomlinson? Okay, Councilman Wyatt?
No question, thank you.
Councilmember Lewis?
Oh, yeah, I just have one question. I see you've lived here 41 years, it said. And
Yes.
so I was just curious what got you interested in being involved now in the Arts and Culture Commission?
Oh, I have been, but in fact, I used to belong to the Dana Point Art Association. I even met in my house for a while. But then so it was just mainly harbor shows. And that's a lot of work to drag all your stuff down there and the A-frames. And I would have my son do it when he was here, but I've done it myself. But I'm too old for that. So I would like to see that increase too.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I see you played the accordion.
A long time ago. I still have two in my living room.
That's kind of near and dear to me since I grew up in the Midwest in a very German area, but we heard a lot of polkas played. So.
Oh, yes. Beer barrel polka?
Yeah, absolutely. And I went to the University of Wisconsin, and they play that constantly.
Oh, yes.
Everybody's dancing. It's a lot of fun. But I guess I always ask the same question, so I'm going to pose the same question to you. What role do you see arts and culture playing in local city government?
And I didn't
what role do you see Arts and Culture Commission playing in local city government?
With a government.
With the local city. What role would you have?
Like this. You have to. That's what it's for. To bridge sort of, I think, the people, the government.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, ma'am, before you go, can I ask you one question? Can I ask you one question? I just wanted to ask you, I noticed you said that you own two businesses. Did you What were those
Yes.
businesses, and do they relate to art? And
What were the
what were the businesses, and do they relate to being on the Arts and Culture Commission?
One was a board and care home in Hemet, and the church bought it out because they wanted to make a parking lot out of the facility. So that's what happened to that. But that was very interesting. And then the other was a restaurant in Laguna Niguel.
Okay.
So little business, here and there.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. Our next candidate is Dr. Lydia Ledesma Reese.
Good evening.
Good evening.
To begin with, I believe you have the application, so you have our background. In terms of maybe for those that are in the room, I've held various leadership positions, and in those positions I've had the honor and ability to be able to, as president of a higher education community college, I've had the opportunity to build a brand new theater arts, performing arts, which you learn a lot in terms of just the technical and the whole construction, and about high water tables, which was very challenging. But you also learn about instructors' views in terms of lighting and where certain positions should be in the theater, which I, as at that time a college president, was made aware of and appreciated. So in my coming to this commission, I've held a leadership just recently with the Niguel Shores Women's Organization and served as their president the past 2 years. And from that, a few members mentioned about possibilities of running for city council, which I do not want to do, but figured that maybe I could be a support somehow in terms of city council. And I love the terms of culture and diversity and the arts. And while I can't say that I played an instrument well, I can say that I have and purchased and been a donor to many different cultural arts events and purchased various arts. And there was a question that I would rather spend my time answering than talking about myself, and that is, what are some ideas I would bring? Well, first of all, I think cooperation and collaboration is the most important thing in terms of working with other constituents and groups out there. And so whether they're tied to the council or not, but that the council would approve, I would work with and would like to, work with, first of all, the committee that I'm on, the commission that I'm on, and the members, if they agreed, would like to work with the various things that are happening in our community already and enhance and embrace and bring things to those that might also enrich them, like the Art Fest and possibly other things that could be added to that. But with that, some of this could be incorporated, and some of these are new ideas. First, I would bring in, and I would ask if you would be interested in lectures, presentations, and demonstrations by our local artists, whether they be art or authors, local authors that could do readings, because that's part of the humanities, and that's what the commission's about, is the humanities. And so I know that the library may do some of this, but work with our public library in bringing our local authors to come out and do some of their presentations, and even our local artists to bring out and talk about their artists. I don't know if you've been able to go to the Laguna Art Festival, where they did have some local artists speak about their art, and I happened to go to that, and I found it very fascinating, and they were local Laguna Beach artists, and I thought that would be nice to do in Dana Point, if we could have some kind of presentation like that. I think it's also very important, and again, this is not any criticism, this is enrichment and bringing forth some new ideas, okay? So I think it would be helpful, being someone that absolutely not only loves diversity, but I live it every day since I am from a diverse cultural background, that I think it's important to bring our Asian, our Hispanic, our Native American communities more into Dana Point. We have such richness in here, although I know our population is 87.25% of the white race, and there's 15.49% Hispanic, Latino, and less than 1%, 0.82% of our African American Black community, and 0.57% American Indian and Alaskan Native, and then mixed percent of Chinese, Filipino, all of those. I think it's important to bring some of those cultural diversity into not only our art, but into our music, our dance, our storytelling. I think it's important also, we had someone from both our seasoned in life, they call themselves elders, but I also think it's important to bring maybe a panel of what I call the panel of elders, or wisdom of the elders, to talk about our local people that have history and present that in a way to our community so that they can present some of their history, because they are, and they can influence who we are today in Dana Point, and how much they've contributed inside this community and outside this community. I think that's so important to continue to support our community. The other one I was going to say anyway, even though you honored them today, was I have two brothers who are policemen, and both the police force, the firemen, and our first responders, I think although, I know you may subcontract some of that out, they also are artists and entertainers, and it would be fun for our children of our community to have some kind of if we could offer it, some kind of a presentation of our local first responders who would be willing to sing, dance, or play the band, or play in a band or something, to do it for our children, so that they can see that these are human beings as well as those people that are protecting us and defending us in Dana Point, because there's such a divide right now with what's going on with diversity, as well as what's going on with people understanding and appreciating our police force and our fire force and our first responders. Festivals, local arts, parks, diversity in our community, and then I wanted to say I want to encompass and embrace all that we have here in Dana Point. I've only been here 7 years. I wish I could say longer. I've lived in Orange County for over 40-some years. I was on the Cultural Diversity Commission in Irvine when I lived there for many years, and then moved for a job, for work. And so I can appreciate the diversity of the cities. I can lived out of state for a while because I never had that experience. I'm a third generation Californian, and really appreciate all of what Dana Point offers. I used to shop at Dana Point, as they said, but I used to shop a lot for antiques, and I find that a lot of those antique shops are gone now. They used to be right downtown, and now a lot of them are gone. And in a way, that's, I know that's progress, and in a way it's kind of sad, because I really enjoyed them. So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, and I will open up now. We may have more questions.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have one question. Okay. In your bio, you state that you oversaw the one theater where you had revamped it. Can you tell me a little more about that? Where was it at?
Yes, it was that particular theater. I've done as a president of a college at another. I remodeled different performing arts, but this one was at Oxnard College, and we built their new theater there. I was in all of the different phases, and then I left and retired because I have grandchildren, and I wanted to be closer to them. But that was at Oxnard College.
Thank you. Councilman Wyatt?
Well, I wanted to mostly acknowledge even though you broke down all the percentages of the diversity in our community, and some of them are small, it doesn't take away from the impact of their culture and their art on our community. So
exactly.
Mixing that in, I'm married to a Filipino woman, I can tell you a lot of background in culture from many of those agents. So I appreciate the fact that you recognize that those cultures will add to our
yes, very much.
programs. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis?
Yes, hi. Thank you for coming in. And I guess I would ask you the same question. You've accomplished a lot in your years, and I would just curious what brought you to thinking that the Arts and Culture Commission is something you'd like to now put your vast energies into?
Well, I happen to also be a part of the Youth Motivation Task Force that goes out to some middle schools, but a lot of high schools in Orange County. And when I go out to speak at those schools with a group of other people and talk about higher education and jobs and careers, I noticed that many of the students would ask about different jobs in the arts. A lot of them in terms of performing arts and want to be, rap singers or whatever. But I noticed that there was a real interest, but they didn't know and have direction of what was available, where to go, and what to do. And so that just got me to thinking about, well, let me just begin. Being an educator at heart, I just thought, well, where do we start? It shouldn't just start in junior high and high school. It should start with the elementary school too. So how do you do that? You bring about what I think is education. You educate our community about different things, and also someone said about the learning process. You learn a lot just by going and going to the different activities and facilities, and so that was part of it. And then I've gone to a lot of the concerts. Some I liked, some I didn't. Some I thought they didn't think about my culture. They didn't really include where I come from, and I think that there are some parts that were maybe could be enriched. Again, it's not a criticism, that could be enriched. And I really like the surf culture here. I think that's really important. And we had a presenter come to the Women's Club and spoke about all the different artwork I think that is being prepared for the new building that's going on. And I remember raising my hand and saying something to the effect there's going to be, I think, a lot of, I'm sure, statues of surfers or male surfers or something like that. And I said, where are the women? Where are the women? And so I happened to look up, and you have 26 statues or murals of public art. I went to look at many of them. I didn't reach all of them. That was another idea, by the way, doing a scavenger hunt for kids to go to all of the different public art and then do a little essay, and then we that would expose them to all the art that you have here, because I didn't know a lot of the parts of the art that you had here. And so I just think that it's important to bring that even to the lower grades, and that kind of got me going. And then when a couple of the people approached me and asked me if I would be interested in something like this, I thought it would be wonderful, especially the cultural diversity part that I liked. I love the arts, and I think you already have some very good people on the commission already that could, really fill in where I lack, because I know I lack some. I'm not a singer, and I don't play an instrument, but I do have a lot to contribute.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a lot to think about. But I'm going to go back to, I always try to ask the same question
Sure.
of each candidate, because I'd like to see how you respond to. But what do you think the role of the Arts and Culture Commission will be in local government?
Sure. Well, having been in boards and things like that, I always appreciate and recognize you follow the process, you follow the rules. So this commission reports to the council, the chair reports to council, not the commission itself. And so we would continue to follow process and procedures that are required by the council and what our job duties and responsibilities are, and we would follow those. I'm assuming they're already doing that, and we'd continue to do that. So I think that's key. Along with that, bring ideas if to our chair through you to say, would you think this is good? You like this idea? You don't? Maybe we should back off for a while. Maybe it's not right. I like to make sure that everything is free, and I think you do too in terms of the public, and so try to work through. That's why I like in collaboration with other groups and things, that you can make that happen somehow in some way. And then I also believe that it's important to work with other groups that would maybe hopefully continue to build relationships not only with the commission but with you as the council. It's a way of a bridge too to other groups.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, our last candidate is Maria Elena Banks.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Vixerick, City Council members, and staff. I come before you for the open position of the Commission of the Arts and Culture Committee. I've been a resident of Dana Point for 25 years. I've raised my boys here, and our common denominator was music. Music and arts. There wasn't a month or week that we didn't do something musical. I had to make sure that they had music lessons. They went to all the arts and plays. They were familiar with artwork. And right now, I am blessed. The tradition continues, and it's now gone down to my grandbabies. They all play an instrument, they all sing, they all do something musical, and they're artists. Actually, I'm going to be putting a couple of them in the Laguna Beach Arts Festival, and maybe we'll just bring them here if we have a contest or something for children in the arts. I think that would be a great way to put them together. Where am I going with this? My main passion is music. We have great group in the commission right now. We have a group of ladies and gentlemen that are really concentrating on the arts, on the art festival. They are great. I love going through it. My passion, like I said, is music. I am a trained vocalist. I sing and I volunteer for our VFW Post 9934, and I sing all around for them, and I also sing at different events in different cities. Anything that's a national anthem or any events that command us singing. I am also involved very highly with Niguel Shores. I've been on their recreation committee. I bring all their recreation to them. I actually organize the how do you call it, the whole committee, because Niguel Shores is all volunteers, and our volunteers were just had it. They were like, originally there were like 2 ladies that were doing everything, and they just said, we're out of here. So I took the how would I say, I think in Spanish and speak in English sometimes when I get nervous, so I apologize. So what I did is I organized and I sent a letter to the community saying, this is what Niguel Shores is about. It's a community group. And without you, Niguel Shores does not work. So I had asked the people to join the recreation committee, and instead of having one person do all the work, I had different people volunteer for each committee and for each event, and they were chairs of that committee. And now it's wonderful. We have the Halloween, we have New Year's, we have 4th of July, we have the concerts in the park, we have all kinds of activities. And the way that I've organized them particularly was to have that done, and so I think we can do the same with the committee, with the Arts and Culture Committee. As I said, music is one of my favorite, my passion, and I know there was some talk about taking some of the concerts out. I think we need to give back to our community. There's been talk that it cost a lot. Now, I noticed that last year we had the blues concert, being part of Dana Point, and I believe we made some money on that. Am I correct? Yes? No? If we could somehow have, I wouldn't say have more than maybe 2 to start with, and bring money into it, and then so we can give back to the community so that they can enjoy the free concerts. I am all for that. I know the VFW, we all enjoy going to that. We also recruit. A lot of the people give back to the city while they purchase. I know that I always go to, Gelson's and buy all my goodies for my picnic, and afterwards we go to dinner around here. So to me, I think music comes from the soul, the heart, and I think maybe we should have Dana Point be known for the music. We have Laguna Beach is known for their arts. San Clemente, we've got the beaches and the surfers. Why not have Dana Point, the OC capital of the music, capital of Orange County? I don't know, I see attracting people to our city and also giving culture. I'm part of, and I've enjoyed also too, the Dana Point Symphony. That's another music. Where else can you go and get top class? I mean, that is amazing what these kids do. So that is why I would love to be able to give back to our city.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open it up for questions. Councilman Tomlinson? Okay, Councilman Wyatt?
Yes, I'm wondering about some ideas about bringing, more music into the city. Where, how, what would it take? What's your ideas on making it a more of a prominent part of entertainment here in our
Well, right now, what I do, because of my involvement with our community and getting different bands, I actually go to a lot of concerts. I go to a lot of places, and I also collaborate with some of the OC staff, the supervisor staff. So I kind of keep in touch with them and how they're going. And then if they're having a concert in another city that they're being part of, I go and I'm introduced to the groups. And I studied them and see, like, for example, for our group, we needed a family type of band. And I think Mayor Pro Tem Mueller was at the last one. So I had a band that brought the kids in, and they brought the air guitars, and they made them part of the group. I also went to the Laguna Niguel, and I saw that with a different type of group, which was more of a 60s and 70s and 80s. And, it's just bringing the families together and making it fun. One of the things that I like about our concerts is the lady that does the hula hoops, and you get all the kids out there doing it. It's really kind of, it becomes a family type of, I think there are more and more kids coming too, so. Did
Thank
that
you.
answer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis?
No, I have no. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Deborah.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Well, I got to ask it one more time. What's the role of arts and culture in local government?
The rule is to work with our city council. We get the ideas, we work the ideas, we disseminate what would work or does not work, and we always bring it to the council for approval.
Okay, and you mentioned, you kind of hit a sweet spot for me. If anybody's paid attention over the last couple of years, I talk a lot about arts and culture and the music component of it, what Dana Point is, and how we could brand our community. So when you talk about bringing music in, you mentioned we made some money off the Doheny Blues Fest. We did. They paid a fee to use the park. How do you see that moving forward in the city of Dana Point? You mentioned maybe two. I didn't understand when you said maybe
Well,
like two
maybe
events.
two. And the reason I say maybe two is because I'm respectful.
To what?
Two different venues that bring money in to cover the rest of because I'm aware that we have, police services, all kinds of services that we pay for the free concerts. So I recognize that. So I think if we have like a couple of pay type concerts where we bring in a very good band that's going to attract people, I'm not saying to bring the Rolling Stones or something like that, but somebody that's very, very good, that would bring in, and help our budget. And the reason I say a couple is because even though there's a lot of us that don't care how loud the music is because we love it, there are other people that do. So I'm, conscious of that in ways. So if we do it, once or twice a year, I'm hope to get their pardon, but I understand all that. So then a couple of concerts ago, there was a group that my grandson didn't really want to listen to, and he goes, Ital, why don't we just sit in our backyard and listen to it so I can play with my Legos? So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Well, actually, before you
sorry.
go,
Oh, I
let me
left
just
the most-
ask.
Oh, I left the most.
Let me just ask you one question.
Oh, so sorry.
I know this is not the first time that you've applied for
Yes.
to be on a commission and participate with the city. Can you tell me a little bit about your passion for serving the city, or why you've applied more than once?
I am, I just keep trying. No, as most of you know, I volunteer a lot. I volunteer for Hispanic 100. I take a Hispanic young adult every year and take them all the way through their career. And then when they get up to when they graduate, I help them get a job. But this is part of the Hispanic 100. So I volunteered for child abuse. I volunteered for the Laura's House of Abused Women. I've been on their board of directors of the Child Abuse Prevention. I've been president of the Orange County Association of Realtors. I'm director of California. I just like to give back. And I feel like being on this commission, I'd be giving back to our city.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming in and for your time. What we're going to do now is we are going to vote, and to follow up on the procedure, just so everyone knows, everyone should have a ballot in front of them that has their initials on it. So what we'll do is write down the name of your vote. Then we'll have the city clerk come and collect them all from us, and then she will read the results. So go ahead and write down the name of your selection, and then let me know when you're done, and we'll call the city clerk up. Okay, has everyone completed their ballot? Okay, Madam Clerk, come collect them.
Okay, so I'm going to read them in the order that I've received them, so probably we'll go from left to right. So Councilmember Lewis has voted Dr. Lydia Reese. And, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I don't know if they can hear you, Madam
You can't
Clerk.
hear me?
Is your microphone on?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay, so Councilmember Lewis voted for Dr. Lydia Ledesma Reese. Mayor Pro Tem Mueller voted for Maria Elena Banks. Mayor Vixoric voted for Maria Elena Banks. Councilmember Wyatt voted for Dr. Lydia Ledesma Reese. And last vote is Councilmember Tomlinson voted for Maria Elena Banks. And that, I believe there's 3 votes for Maria Elena Banks. That is correct.
Okay. Congratulations to Maria Elena Banks as the newest member of the Arts and Culture Commission. Thank you, and thank you all for coming in tonight.
Mr. Mayor, just so quick, I want to congratulate Ms. Banks, but we had some very talented applications here tonight. And remember, we have ex officio positions available as well. We can have as many of those on our Arts and Culture Committee as we need. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we could open up some of those positions and get you involved. Maybe introduce you to it at some point, get you to become a voting member. So I'd love to see some of you ladies come back. Thanks.
Anyone else like to say anything?
Yes,
Councilman Wyatt?
we had a lot of good ideas and a lot of thought put into this. So I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Miller. We could use some of what we heard tonight across the, actually in a number of places in the city, and experience from, what if we decided to construct something? We have experience there, right? Bringing in the culture. I love the ideas about sort of finding our roots and folk, and local artists and promoting them. So I would like to not lose some of the talent and get them involved somehow. I think it would be really, really a benefit to the city. So I hope some of you will stay involved with the commission and find a way to work with them. Thank you.
Councilman Thomas?
I'll echo the sentiments of Mr. Wyatt and Mr. Miller, too.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yeah, let me just echo that the people who came were very talented, dedicated, had some great ideas and credentials, and it was a really difficult decision. So I would encourage you all to apply again when we have positions next time vacant, and get involved and stay involved because we could use your talent. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll echo that as well. As you might have seen, persistence can pay off. Please, just because this might not have been the time that you were selected, we really had 4 outstanding candidates tonight. So I would encourage you all to please stay involved and keep coming back and try to stay involved in the city. I think we could use all of your ideas. So thank you very much. Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, I skipped over you. I'm sorry.
Just a quick question. No, you weren't speaking over me. I just have a
I skipped over you when we came. Go
Well,
ahead.
I'd already spoken because I started it.
Okay. Please speak now.
Just a quick question. So and this is to staff, if we had interest from some of these candidates to become ex officio members, what's the process to creating that new seat and adding them in? I'm assuming that they may want it, they may not. So maybe
Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head what exactly the resolution said that the council adopted, but you have created that position, and certainly we'd be happy to work with anyone interested. And I would say Nancy Jenkins is still in the audience, and she's always and Karen's back there too. So 2 of our leaders on arts and culture, they're always looking for folks to attend their meetings and participate in all their activities. So by all means, if you don't stick around till the end of the meeting, feel free to drop by and stop and say hello to Nancy and Karen. And there's lots of ways to get involved.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, I don't believe you have to wait a full year if we want to create an ex officio position. We would have to. So if there's interest in that, please get with our Ms. Jenkins or Schnell. Let us know, and we'll see what we can do about putting you on. Thanks.
Okay.
If
Councilor
any of
Wyatt.
you do not know Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Snell, they are in the back corner there. They should at least raise their hands and and acknowledge. So you take that opportunity to meet with them.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again on behalf of the entire City Council. Moving on to the next item on new business is item 14, the 2018-2019 Dana Point Youth Board appointments. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Yes, Rachel Johnson has your staff report tonight.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. We have before you tonight, again, the 2018-2019 Dana Point Youth Board appointments. These are appointments that are made every year to students that reside in Dana Point. So not just Dana Hills students, but high school students that reside in Dana Point. We had 9 applications this year. 2 of those will be members at large, as they've already termed out, and one of them was a member at large last year. So she's been part of the youth board for every single year of high school, which is pretty great. And then we have 1 new board member, and the other 6 are returning. So I'm available for any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments on this?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very well. Bring it back to council. The recommended action is that we appoint the 7 board members and 2 members at large to the Dana Point Youth Board. I'll move the recommended action.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
No, Mr. Mayor, I have no questions.
Okay, Councilor Wyatt, Councilmember Lewis, and Mayor Pro Tem Miller. Okay, in that case, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay. The next item on the agenda is item 15, City Attorney Periodic Status Report. Was placed on the agenda by Councilmember Lewis, so I will turn it over to Councilmember Lewis for a report.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have been talking periodically about managing our expenses, and there are two people that the City Council oversees directly. One is the city manager, and what we pay the city manager is fixed. So that makes our job really easy in terms of finances. The other person that we see is oversee is the city attorney. And that one is a large expense, and it has, it's not fixed. It changes from period to period, and I think it's for us to get a handle on what we're spending and if we are spending it effectively, efficiently, and timely, and most important for what I think I am trying to achieve by this is within our budget and determining, okay, do we need to add more money to do something? Do we need to determine that this is not a good use of our money? We need a way to track on a item by item basis. What did we budget? How much have we spent? Are we within budget? And was it a good use of the money? So we are already getting, I have a status report form here, pursuant to a policy that we passed in January, which said that the city attorney reports directly to the city council, and that the city attorney should periodically, but no less than quarterly, issue a written report to city council for all ongoing legal matters. The report shall contain sufficient data to enable the city council to assure that ongoing and anticipated legal matters are being effectively handled in a timely manner and within budget. So this report and form that I have come up with is really a way to get a better handle on the budget. It is not in any way an indication or a comment on the quality of the work that we are getting, or that in any way there is a deficiency. My concern, and what I think what we are trying to do up here, is make sure that we are being good stewards of the city's money. And since we spend somewhere between $1.2 million and this year over that, if our claims and demands are any indication of where we're going, I would like to see that we, as the city council, stewards of this money, have a mechanism to track what we're spending and where we're spending it. So I was looking at the claims and demands on page, I think it was 55, item 8. Everybody there? Okay, so it's the bottom one, and so we got a bill for 4 months, averaged, if we average all 4 of those months together per month, we're now spending about $128,000 a month. And annualizing that this year would be about $1,500,000. So there's no way at this point that we track on an ongoing basis for each item what we budgeted. Do we have the budget? Are we budgeting properly at the beginning of a fiscal year, a realistic budget? Because for the past couple of years that I've been on this council, we've had to constantly adjust the budget. So if we could get a more realistic handle on what things cost us when we're going into litigation and determining, okay, this is probably going to cost us somewhere between X and X plus for this kind of case. What are the net results of this, and was this a good use of our money? Well, there's no way to do that unless we have a way to historically look back and track and say, this has been successful, this has been less successful, this probably isn't a good use of the money, let's find some other way to do that. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish with that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No public comments. Okay, very well. I will bring it back to council then. Do I hear a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion. I will make a motion that we move the recommended action that the city council require the city attorney to submit the city council written periodic status report on all new and ongoing legal matters, both litigation and transactional, beginning with the next city council meeting, September 18, 2018, and thereafter once a month on the third Tuesday of each month in the format that is attached to the status report. And one thing I will say before there's a second is the status report starts out with just legal matter information as section 1, which doesn't change, and it's just basic information, you know, name, type, scope of work, date open, date closed. The second is just the status, what action has been taken, what anticipated action will be taken. And we already get status reports every council meeting on that, and they're very comprehensive. So I don't see that that would change either. So it's really section 3 that is just the difference, and that is the budget and billing information.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I will second it, certainly for the sake of discussion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. As always, we offer the first opportunity to the maker of the motion. You have already spoken. Would you like to add more?
Quite exhaustively.
Okay. In that case, we'll open it up to the rest of the council. Anyone like to speak on this? Councilmember Tomlinson?
Yes. Where does the status report get filed, and who sees the status report? Is this become a public document that's put into our council agendas every third Tuesday?
Well, I would certainly see section 1, all the legal matter information, and the budget as being open to public if the city council wants to, because there's nothing in there that isn't public information. Already the list of litigation matters are included on the agenda as closed session items, and budget and billing is also public information, but the status would not change. We see that in closed session, and it would remain in closed session unless the council decided for whatever reason that any particular one would be open.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, may I comment on this item?
Sure.
Just for some, just in response to some things that were just said, I just want to make sure the council has, correct information.
Of course. I mean, what we're going to do is during the council comments,
whenever
the council can ask questions, and was there something that arose?
Well, just the dollar amounts that we spend on litigation items are expressly deemed by the Supreme Court to not be public information. There's been a recent case in the last year that indicates that that's attorney-client privilege information, because someone that's suing the city could just keep track of dollar amounts that you're spending and see when you're gearing up for things, and they can get an insight into strategies. So that's an issue that you might want to consider. I don't have any problem providing this information to the council if it's something that you think is useful. Anyway, I just wanted to comment on that, and I guess one other comment, for whatever it's worth, is that the 4 months that Councilmember Lewis referred to also includes a major piece of litigation that just was in trial. So that number is really skewed. I don't think that the $1.5 million is really an accurate assessment of what the annualized cost will be, especially considering that as a result of that litigation, we're going to receive a check of $250,000 in reimbursement since we were successful. So I think that's just something to take into account.
Okay.
And again, just let me introduce. If you think that this needs to be privileged, then I have no problem with that. That's not my intent here. And again, I'm not quibbling over numbers here. $1.2 million, $1 million, $1.5 million. It doesn't matter. 900,000. It's just something that the city council has the responsibility for managing, and I feel that this tool will allow us to make good decisions based on data and metrics versus just, what we think might be a good idea.
My suggestion, for whatever it's worth, would be when you get these reports, presuming this is the council's desire, and it's already council policy to do this, so that you just decide on a case-by-case basis if there's information you want to have released, and otherwise, I would just presume everything that I'm providing to you would be privileged.
Okay, let's get around through the rest of the council comments here. Councilmember Wyatt.
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. Yeah, I think the discussion about the amount being disclosed too early came up initially, and so yes, I think we have to be careful about that. I think the approach of having us decide what is not protected any longer and when is probably the right approach to take, as opposed to assuming that we could do that consistently. So to Councilmember Lewis, is the information you asked for, at least as I looked at it, consistent with what we already adopted as a policy in the past, except for the frequency? Is that correct? I think we said at least quarterly.
At least quarterly, yes. And the policy says that it is handled timely manner and within budget. It's the within budget that I'm focusing on, not the effectively timely manner. You know, we get that status report. It's the within budget that we have no information on, and that's what I'm trying to.
But these data elements that you're asking on this report were included in the request that we passed.
Yes, in policy 227.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I have a question for City Manager Denny related to this. We, or maybe it will go to Mr. Killebrew, but we have begun to move some of the city attorneys' budgets into the departments that use those services as we move forward. Is that correct?
We have not done that for this 2-year budget. That's what we're looking for the next 2-year budget cycle to do.
So that's a plan, and understood. Yeah. And how frequently do you need the data back in order for you to, and what data in order for you to produce the reports? In other words, already you must have to get the billings in and be able to allocate them to departments, or you will have to when you start to do it that level. I assume you would need them on a monthly basis as you produce the financials for the month at any rate. Is that correct?
That is correct. In order to get the details of all the different matters that he works on, we would have to have them before we close the books each month, which is generally about the 15th to the 20th, depending on some other things. The 20th at the latest on a normal month. Year end, it's a little bit later.
So essentially, this ask of this from Councilmember Lewis actually should be essentially necessary anyway for us to close the books once we start to allocate that lump sum bill, if you will, back out to department levels and looking at cases. Is that correct?
If we're working toward what you would normally see in the private sector, isn't always the case in the public sector. For essentially full accrual accounting each month, I'd have to have it by the 20th.
Yeah.
Following the end of the month.
But I'm just trying to make sure that as we look forward, that we're consistent. So as we're getting data in and we need to process it into financials versus reports and whatever, that's one set of data that's consistently reported, and we're not, countering or asking for things that just won't be useful across the board. Okay, thank you. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis, anything else?
I guess I put in dates here because I find that if we don't have dates, things just don't happen. And so that's why I put in the next time and then the third Tuesday to give once a month, because next time is the third Tuesday.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my colleagues have kind of hit on all this. We already have a policy that requires this to be done quarterly. Mr. White hit on something that Mr. Killebrew mentioned. Trying to break it down right now would mean full accrual accounting. We don't currently do that, and I'm not not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying at this point, we don't. So when we start making that transition, I think that would be the right time to start implementing it on a case by case. Unless you can already do it somehow. If it's available, by all means, give it to us. And my concern is, as we talk about the escalating, legal fees as they're moving around, I don't want to add another. I don't want to spend a lot of time and money on this if we can pull it out of the accounting system anyway. Give us the updates on just like you do now on the cases. But if the dollars can be pulled out of accounting, let's do that. But other than that, I think this is fine. Continue to do it on a quarterly basis. If you look at our policy, I think we've missed 2 reports that we were due. Let's not miss this one. It's due at the end of September anyway. That would be the end of the quarter, I believe. Let's get that in and take a look at it and keep it in closed session as it is attorney-client at this point. And like you said, if it does make sense to remove that at some point, we can do it. But in an ongoing, I think it's important that we keep it in closed session. But I don't see a problem with following the policy that we currently have in place.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll make a couple comments and explain the way I view this item. As has been mentioned by my colleagues, we do have a policy on this. It went into effect in January of 2018 for quarterly reports, which means the first report would have been due that first quarter in the calendar year of 2018 would have been January to March, then April to June, and now we're in the July to September period. So I think as Mayor Pro Tem Miller mentioned, we've missed 2 reports. And so the way I'm viewing this is basically a request from one of my fellow council members to enforce the policy that we have. And, unless there's good cause to waive the policy, I think we should enforce the policy. So, having said that, I'm in support of the idea of enforcing the policy, having the reports given to us, all the points that have been made already about what goes into it, whether it should be confidential or not. I think, hopefully I'm not misinterpreting, but one of the purposes of the motion was to help in our deliberative processes as to whether we should continue with a lawsuit or not. And of course, I do think so. All that information should be held as confidential if it is going towards our deliberative processes, and for the reasons also mentioned by the city attorney. So, I would support that we do keep it in closed session or confidential. And I believe that we need to enforce the policy, which says no less than quarterly. And so even though we've missed a couple, I think we can get back on track, as might have been mentioned, so that we should have the next report due at the end of this quarter. We get it back on track, and then we move forward with it. Having said that, there are some things that's what I support. So I guess if I can make a friendly amendment, I don't know if it'll be accepted or not, but I would change it basically to enforce the policy. So we take out the dates that are involved, and basically so that we get this report that we should have been getting. So I'll make an amendment, or if that's acceptable.
Well, I'd say the policy says no less than quarterly. It doesn't say it's a quarterly. Our policy says no less. So since we get a report every 2 weeks anyway, this just gives us monthly, and given the status of litigation and the cost of litigation, I feel that monthly would be appropriate.
Okay. In that case, I'll see if there's any support for what I said by making a substitute motion to enforce the policy.
Mr. Mayor, I have a few more questions actually that I've come up with. First of all,
well, hang on a second. I made a substitute motion. Okay. If there's no need, we can go on discussing. If there's no support for my motion, then it is what it is. So I don't know if there's a second for it.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Now we'll continue the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is, how many matters are we talking? I mean, day-to-day activities that we're doing, transactional. How big is this report going to be every 2 weeks? I mean, I understand we have large cases that have been going on, and we're apprised of most of those. But on the smaller day-to-day matters, how much of this is going to be reported? Everything? Like we call it planning for a question. Like planning calls up city attorney. Okay, well we spent this much, and is that what we're talking about too?
It's your policy. I can tell you that I have approximately 125 matters for the city. Separate billing matters that we've created over time. Of those, wild guess, 50 of them, maybe 75 of them are no longer active. So, you've got roughly 75 matters. This is a difficult conversation for me because we had this conversation in closed session once before, and so I'm trying to be mindful of that. I guess my impression was that the policy was intended to apply to litigation matters where, having updates, in my mind, makes, perfectly good sense. Not to say that it doesn't make sense to have updates on other matters, but, I mean, what's the update going to say on matter one, which is the matter where I bill you for attending meetings, council meetings? I was going to say I attended council meetings. I mean, is that useful to you? Obviously, that's not the intent of this, exercise. It's to get, valuable information to you. So I guess I sort of envision doing this once initially as sort of a template, and then trying to figure out a cost-effective way and time-efficient way to only update it for non-litigation matters on an as-needed basis. The prior discussion we had bluntly in closed session was, that the financial information was going to be provided by city staff, not by me. So if you want to change that, that was the direction I was operating under. If you want to change that and want me to provide it, I can go get it. But I think that the city staff has it really easy to provide to you. I got an annual update on that information today. I don't know if that's not in a format that's helpful to you. Maybe we can figure out a better way to get you information that's valuable to you and helps you make your, helps you do your jobs better. So I'm kind of getting back to Councilmember Tomlinson's issue. If you want updates on every single matter, we can try and do it. I think that, my billing summaries are pretty detailed, and they provide you information on what we do on a daily basis. The city manager, as I understand it, gets those every month, and then he hands them out to the department heads for each of the departments that are involved in the work we do, and then the department heads review those, and if they have questions about stuff, they contact me, or they contact the city manager who contacts me. So on the non-litigation matters, they've been sort of categorized by Mr. Killebrew as sort of kind of, I can't remember the terminology he used, but I've heard it used this way before, sort of your routine matters. Those are kind of your day-to-day, my interactions with Mr. Sinacori or Mr. Schneider on, just sort of, routine issues where we answer questions. I don't know if it's helpful for you to give you an update saying, yeah, I interacted day-to-day with Mr. Schneider, Mr. Sinacori asking questions. Then there's a whole other category of things that are sort of categorized as city council-driven items. And those are issues where the council has made a conscious policy choice that you would like us to go do something. Like, for instance, our efforts to compel the unlicensed residential recovery facilities to be licensed. And so items like that, I think it's important that you are getting information on it, so that, because those are projects the council specifically directed, and those are the items that typically in our closed session reports you're getting the information on from us. We have been providing the budget information, but I can get that. I mean, if you want us to provide it as part of that, that's fine. Part of the problem, of course, with that, as my understanding, is that the council made a conscious decision not to budget for those items, and that the budget adjustments that were made were to account for the fact that the council chose not to budget for those things. So it's difficult for me to give you a report that says what the budget amount was when, well, the answer is zero. We talk about it as we go on, but that was a conscious decision in the budgeting process to kind of take money out of other pockets of money to pay for what you knew would be there. I mean, there's no secret that there would be litigation issues that have to be funded, but so those are just some challenges to the things you're talking about that I think are worth thinking about at least.
Okay, and I'm not sure the substitute motion covers this either, but I'm quite concerned on litigation matters that we have, that if these, total anticipated reimbursement costs, if that stuff gets out, that's going to damage our position, I think, because somebody will say, well, gee, the city is only expecting to get X dollars back. And what, I think an opposing counsel could use that as damaging information against us in our case. So I'm quite loath to give that out, and I'm not sure that the substitute motion handles that part of my concern.
I'll simply state, and hopefully maybe I wasn't clear, this is not meant to be public. If this information is given, that I think I stated this would be held as confidential and should not get out, and the only people that should know it should be the city council members and the attorney.
Okay, so your substitute motion would cover my concerns on that second issue that I brought up.
I certainly am not. I think, as I said, this covers our deliberative processes. I think it is talking about what you're talking about. I do not want that to be made public either. So, yes, I think is the best way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Tomlinson. Councilmember Wyatt?
So I heard a whole bunch of sort of interesting pieces that I didn't necessarily interpret the same way as everyone else here going forward. So first of all, to respond to the in dialogue here about this remaining confidential, I think on the initial motion or the substitute motion, in both cases, we made it clear that this was confidential information unless subsequently the council voted to release pieces of it. So I think in both cases, we're not looking for this to be public information as it's produced and delivered. In terms of the reporting and then the process of getting this data back, I mean, we've had some of these conversations before, but I want to come back to both timing. So we, I believe, each of us as council members today got a spreadsheet of city attorney costs through the end of FY 2017, so through June of last year. And that data is produced by our accounting department based on information provided to them by the city attorney when he reports his billing, and then the detail behind that billing so that it can be broken down and allocated to these categories that are on that spreadsheet. So one of the discussion parts we had before was, do we actually have the detail to produce this budget report that we need to know where we are against budget in our accounting system today? And if so, how do we leverage that as opposed to duplicating it? So that should already be happening, even though we don't budget it back by department today. The staff at some period, the city, I'm not exactly sure when, go back and take the billing records and allocate them back to these. Can you tell me, Mr. Killebrew, how often you actually allocate these out against these various categories?
We get the bills every month. They list all the detailed matters that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, we don't put the detail into our accounting system. We pay the bill. So that's what our accounting system has. But we do produce a spreadsheet, and we've been doing it for a number of years, that'll list all the matters by month, so that we can see fiscal year to date what a matter has generated. And it might go several fiscal years, so it's not hard to add a particular code enforcement case up. So we've got it in that detail in spreadsheets, and my assistant actually puts those together within a day or two of us getting the bills from Mr. Munoz.
Okay.
So we get those regularly.
So as long as you have the billing detail, as long as you have the detail behind the invoice, you will do that work within a few days of receiving it, correct?
Yes, and one of the things that we started doing this year was we actually do break out revenue we get back in.
Mhm.
So when we get reimbursed, we've always done it for developer-related stuff because we've got control of a deposit that they give us, and as we do work on their development, it's associated with the city attorney. We reimburse ourselves out of a trust account we have set up for all these deposits we get. That hasn't been an issue, but we'll have cases that, Rattan and Tucker went to court for us a year and a half ago, and we're just now getting the reimbursement in, and the timing of those is,
Right,
I
understood.
can't link
Right.
them together for you in a timely manner, if you will.
Every month they will be necessarily linked.
But we talked this morning about actually adding revenue next to each of the matters that we've never tracked. I'm going to tell you, going into any kind of litigation, we don't go into this with the thought we're going to get our money back. I've never seen that. I've been in this business 28 years, and it's always you go into a matter where you're taking legal action against somebody to gain compliance with the law. And I've never seen a decision made to say we're going to do this because we know we're going to get reimbursed for our costs. So I know there's a line on here that talks about total fees budgeted, and I've never seen that. There's at some point in a case where it looks like we might get fees back, but even then, excuse me, I'm not budgeting it. You literally don't budget till I see it, because a lot of these things are court actions that we wait for the court action to happen. So.
Okay, thank you. And then, Councilmember Lewis, is the breakdown of the information that was on that spreadsheet that we were looking at today earlier too consolidated to answer the questions that you were asking to be answered, or is there not enough detail?
Yeah, okay, so I practiced law for 30 years. Big firms, my own firm, and we have billing packages. And when you have a client, you open up a billing you open up a subcategory for each matter. So if I were to do a review of a contract, the client would ask how much is that going to cost, and then I would bill that. And if I was doing litigation, I would have a separate billing for that, so the client can track, okay, how much am I going to spend on this lawsuit? What should I budget for it? And then each month when I send out the bill, it's, okay, review and contract, this case, whatever we were doing, it's built into the program.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically all I'm looking for, because to get something that just says litigation, $500,000. If you guys don't want to track where the money goes and where it's, where we're spending it, well, that's clearly the decision of this council. But for me, I want to know that. So we're doing a lot of code enforcement, and we get a whole list of, okay, gave a citation for this client, or the person cited, who got the citation didn't show in court. So there's a whole report, but I have no idea what we're spending on that. Is that a good use of our money? How much money do we spend doing that sort of thing? And, maybe we should be doing it, maybe we shouldn't be doing it. I don't know. But without some sort of metric, I have no idea where our money is going and if it's a good use of the money.
So the way that the spreadsheet was broken down and the way we do our billing, I think, is exactly what you were just describing. So for the prosecution work that we do, for instance, we talk about citations, you were just referring to that. In that spreadsheet, matter 5, ties to all of the work that we did on each prosecution matter. These are small matters that it's difficult to do efficiently to begin with. I think to give you a report on each individual matter would not be helpful to you, and we would spend more doing the reports than we would spend on the case sometimes. But to give you, a lump sum on a monthly basis for prosecution work, you get that. For each actual lawsuit we get involved in, whether we bring it or someone sues the city, we open a new matter. So on a lawsuit by lawsuit basis, you'll have a number for each lawsuit. On on projects, I might spend 15 minutes reviewing a contract. It's not, I don't think, productive for me to open a new matter to review a contract for 15 minutes. A lot of that kind of work just kind of gets dumped into the general account, which, that runs, I'm guessing Mike can probably tell us better, but about $15,000 a month. And there's a lot of stuff that just kind of goes into that. Phone calls, routine phone calls I get, I must get 100 emails from the city every day that I'm, constantly responding to. For each, couple of minute thing that I do here and there, for me to open a new matter or to report separately, I don't think is useful. But I think that we've got it lumped into large categories. So my suggestion would be that you take a closer look at those categories that are already being provided. And if in any of those categories you want further breakdown, then we can maybe figure out a way to do that better. And if it's useful to you, I'm happy to give you as much detail as you want. I'm trying to think of what is an efficient way to do it. Apparently these spreadsheets that Mr. Kilbrew provided for us today are something that are kept on a monthly basis that he could provide monthly. I will say there's one caveat you should be aware of. At the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year, they're going to be really accurate. During the course of the year, just depending on what my billing department's workload is and what my workload is, sometimes we don't make the deadline that the finance department here wants to have. So they'll do a guesstimate and then kind of true it up the next month. So it kind of helps keep, they're doing that already. They're kind of keeping an eye on this kind of stuff. And so there's some minor fluctuations on a month-to-month basis where something might go back and get corrected just based on timing. But overall, you can get a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like on these large categories.
So is are the groupings that come on the spreadsheet, do they group multiple items together? Are they the same level of detail that the billing is provided, or are they sometimes summarized up to a higher level?
The spreadsheet takes each individual matter, does not add matters together.
Okay.
I have sorted them. If you notice in the spreadsheet, I've sorted them based on whether or not it's city staff directed work, our questions, routine questions, whether it was city council related, like litigation matters separate from the development projects that we're billing to. So they are segregated that way, but none of them are added together. You see the same level of summary detail, if you will, by matter that we have.
Okay.
And within that, though, you've seen the bills before.
Yes, I have.
So each matter that you might see summarized on that spreadsheet, the bill for that particular matter could be 3, 4, 5 pages long that details Mr. Munoz and other Rattan staff's time down to 6-minute increments.
Right.
And actually tells us what they were specifically doing.
Yes, I've looked at those. Yeah. So coming back to Council Member Lewis, then, so would the issue be? I'll wait until.
Councilmember Lewis, Councilmember Wyatt,
I
I'd
wanted
like
to
yield
come
you for a
back.
question.
So basically, by Mr. Kilbrew's report, so Mr. Munoz told us that he bills by matter, right? He opens a matter and he bills by it in tenths of an hour increments. So, and Mr. Kilbrew simply translates each of those, the summary of the hours billed for that month into the dollar amount and puts it on the spreadsheet. So my question coming back is, if you got the report that we've asked for here, and it were at the top level or matter, which is how he bills, then in some cases you would like to have more detail, which means the matter has to be broken into multiple matters. Is that correct? I mean, essentially, if you got the detail you asked for today at the level he keeps it in his billing system, it would look just like that report essentially, because that's the level that he breaks down his billing to. So it wouldn't actually give you, as I understand it, it wouldn't give you a greater level of detail because he's not recording the time at a greater level. He's recording it to one of those matters that are being summarized. I think in previous discussions we've said if one of those categories appears to be too big, then the discussion would come as to whether we wanted to find a way to separate that into 2 matters or 3 matters or something. And we would just have to do that on an agreed to basis, I guess. I'm just trying to make sure we're not spending a lot of time and doing something that where we got in the end wouldn't give us any information we don't already have. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, if it's helpful to the council, let me suggest this. I can add, we'll just make a point on the next agenda for closed session to be having a discussion about this topic, and just make the time and bring in the financial information so we can just spend 15 or 20 minutes or half an hour talking it through to figure out if it's. I want to give you the information that's useful to you. So let me try and put something together based on what I'm hearing here, consistent with the policy we already have. And if you want something more, just tell me and I'll get you something more.
Well, I kind of think that's what I'm trying to do here. So like we have 15 litigation matters in this closed session agenda. And I look at this report here, and they aren't, there's a couple of them that are broken out.
That's because the cases that you're looking at from tonight's closed session are largely cases that were filed in this fiscal year, not in the last fiscal year. So if the case existed before, when that report was put out, we have a matter for it. Some of the work on those particular matters were falling into the catch-all of matter 8 on some of the some of the research and things like that. So there's a little bit of that happens until we actually have an actual lawsuit. Once we have an actual lawsuit, then we open up a new matter for it. So
right. So what I'm saying is, okay, you give us a report each session, and it says it's a status report basically, and it breaks it out by these cases. You tell us, okay, here's what's happened on this case, and if something new has happened, it's in bold. And all I'm saying is the information that doesn't get put in that report is what have we spent on that case? And that's what I'd like to add just to our already status report that we get, although I wouldn't ask for it every 2 weeks like we get now, but so that we can keep track of, all right, here's what's happened, here's the case, here's all the basic information, here's the status of what we've done on this case, and here's the billing on this case.
I don't want to sound like I'm trying to throw somebody under the bus, but I thought that you were getting that already in just reporting that you were getting from finance. I didn't realize you weren't getting that, because when we talked, my gosh, it's Councilmember Wyatt and I have actually sat down and had conversations about this very topic within the last 6 months, and I thought that you were getting regular updates like that. So it's just there was a disconnect between my side on the legal and staff side on the finance in terms of making sure you're getting that information. But that's, I mean, it's available, and there's no reason for you not to have access to it. So, as often as it's available, we can get it for you.
Well, and since you're doing this report, it's just so convenient to have it all in one place. You're doing the report, here's the case, here's the status, here's the money. And I mean, it's nothing different than you do in your billing system anyway. When you put time in the timesheet, you have to bill it to something, so we can simply track it on an ongoing basis. Okay, this case has cost X dollars. And at some point when there's reimbursed, I understand we're not reimbursed till sometimes long after. That's okay. I'm not saying that we have to every month have something happen on that case, just like we don't have every month something active happens.
Is a spreadsheet like one we got today useful for you if that's updated on a monthly basis? I mean, staff has that, and it's a matter of kind of pushing some buttons. I mean, I can recreate it on my end and try and give it to you, but.
I mean, it's better than zero, but it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for when you give the status report, here's the matter, here's what we've done, and here's what we spent so far, and here's what we budgeted on it. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Here's how much it's cost us, here's how much we put in costs, here's how much we paid in fees, here's how much we budgeted. So originally we thought, okay, this will be a $60,000 case, and it turns out it's a $10,000 case. Great, and we got $10,000 back. So that's useful information, and I can track it on a case-by-case basis. And it just seems to me that's what you put into your billing system anyway. So all I'm asking you to do is just give me that same information that's already in the billing system when you give a status report.
Asking me to do spreadsheets is asking me to do the equivalent of playing grand piano in the middle of this room right now. So.
Well, you don't have to do it. I'm not asking it to come from you specifically, but I know when the bills come in, hopefully, I mean, I've tried to go through some of these bills, and they're not always broken down the way a status report is. This matter got billed at this matter, and all I'm saying is
we can take the information and put it into your
status report. That would be really helpful. And I'm not asking you, the attorney, to sit down and do that. This could be very clerical, since it's basically a clerical function. Okay.
Okay.
So that's what I'm asking.
I think I'd like to bring this to some kind of resolution.
I have one more question. Detail.
Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to know. So on the report that we were looking at today, when you're talking about the litigation matters, there's a record ID. Does the record ID and the matter ID, are they different? The green and red, they're different. I'm just trying to look at the tie that would make it easy to say.
There will be a way, a very easy way, that you could look from that sheet that we talked about in closed session tonight to the financial sheet that you're referring to.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I just want to make sure that there's a tie between those sheets that are just easy.
Yeah, we can add a column to the spreadsheet that you're referring to that would make it connect.
Okay, because if they connected, then then taking the piece of data across is, whoever takes it across is a trivial matter. Okay, thank you.
So have we hashed this out? Do we even need a motion? Have we resolved? Is everybody happy?
I would like, if we have a motion, let's just vote on this and get it in the record, if we could. So we have a motion and a second.
Well, we have a motion and we have a substitute motion. We haven't
And a
dealt with the
second.
we have
Didn't
a
you
second
second
on
the
both of them.
substitute? Yeah.
So we haven't dealt with the substitute yet.
Okay.
So I guess for clarity, since I made the substitute motion, this is the policy is what you're going to get. You're happy with that?
I'm happy with the policy. I'm just trying to, what I'm doing is how to implement this policy with the billing part of it that we haven't gotten yet. tied to our status report. And I'm just trying to say, okay, let's do it on the third Tuesday of every month. If that's not a convenient date, give me a different date. I don't care. And if it's
Okay.
only quarterly, that's fine too. But
Okay.
I want something that we agree to as part of our policy, because then at least it doesn't just slip through the cracks at some point. We go, oh, it's been, 2 quarters. Geez, we haven't gotten anything.
Okay, well, let's vote. We have the substitute motion to enforce the policy and a second.
So,
I'll
so
call
your
for the vote.
motion is to,
Enforce our policy and have the report be given at the end of this quarter.
and does the report contain the billing information per the status form attached to my staff report? Okay, so, well, I can't, I'm not sure I can amend because we already have we have a motion and an amendment.
We're getting into
Already.
procedural stuff. Do you have any,
Okay,
do you have
all
any
right.
solution there, Councilman Thomas?
Okay.
I think that we've kind of come up with what Councilmember Lewis is driving at. We've come up with a solution. We just need to see it in a report format. Do we need a motion even to handle these things? I think we've kind of agreed that this is the way we're going to present information in future meetings to us, and I think the problem's kind of solved.
Okay, so can I?
It's just further direction to staff is what I'm seeing is what we're doing.
I got it. And Mr. Mueller made a suggestion to me that I simply make a friendly amendment to the second, to the substituted motion, that we get the billing information that I put on the status report form into the reports that the city attorney is going to give us on a, what did you want, quarterly? Is that what you want?
Okay.
And I'm fine with quarterly.
And this is expected to be confidential, correct?
Yes. So I'm good. So,
Okay.
so if I could amend your motion to say that, I'm good with that.
Okay. Sure, I'll accept that amendment. Okay, we've got a second for that, and let's put this matter to rest. Call for the vote. It passes 5-0.
Thank you. I know that was lengthy and tedious, but I just felt it was necessary.
It was actually informative.
We
so
did
that's
get,
good.
yes.
The next item is we go into unfinished business. Item number 16, a story pole ordinance. This was placed on the agenda by Councilmember Lewis. I will turn it over to Councilmember Lewis for a report.
Thank you. Okay, item 16, I just have it. Here we go. Okay, so story poles, for those who, because everyone asks, what's a story pole? So I'm talking about the basically wooden stakes that are put on a building before it is built or when there's an addition of a sufficient size, so that the mass, the scope, the density, the height can all be visually seen prior to the time that the building is, basically from the time it goes to the planning department and if required by the planning commission till the time the appeal period has passed. Now there's a lot of HOAs that already have this requirement, but a lot of us don't live in HOAs. And the impetus for this was really twofold. Two projects. One, what was the Majestic project, and now the Rain Tree project. Really large projects. They were not, sorry?
Please continue. He was.
Okay. So they were not they were not story poled for, well, Majestic wasn't story poled at all. It had some cherry pickers with flags and a string for like 24 hours. And so it was very difficult. And honestly, I was just talking to the city manager today. I'm still having problems trying to visualize what that large project is going to look like by the time it's actually built. And it seems to me a good time to know what it's going to look like should not be once it's totally built. And then the Via Verde was the other one where we had many, many people from that area come and say, you know, this isn't going to fit in with the neighborhood. It's too big, it's too bulky, it's too dense, it's too high. But again, I feel that had we had a requirement across the city to story pole that building, people would have been able to see it, and it may very well have been that would assuage fears that it wasn't any different than anything else in that neighborhood. And I know that there's been discussions of, okay, put it up on a computer and you know, let's simulate it, but I'm one of those really dimensionally challenged people, and you know, I have a hard time reading maps and visualizing plans. So for people like me, and I think there's a lot of us out there, I just, you know, want to see it. And I know that, you know, when we went to the Planning Commission, there were several residents that spoke on behalf of this and said they would really like to see this. And one of them was an architect who's, you know, been in that business for 30 years, and he said, I'm in Laguna Beach all the time. They have story poles, it works fine, and you know, people get to see it, and it's not out of the ordinary. It's not unusual for cities to require this procedure so that people can see what's coming in or how their neighborhood is going to change. And I think it's a tool for residents, and it's a tool for the city, because I think that we will find that we can actually get people put at ease who are fearful of how their neighborhood is going to change because there's no way for them to actually see what that impact is. And so, of course, we kind of fill in the gaps with what we see as our worst nightmare, our worst fear, and then it brings people here saying things like it's too big, it's too bulky, it's too messy. So that's why I want the story poles.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments? Thank you. The first speaker tonight is Richard Gardner, followed by Rick Erkeneff.
Good evening, City Council. Richard Gardner, and I was the person who objected to the very large double duplex development on Via Verde because of the size. And I wasn't successful in my effort to persuade. And as I look around my community, I see that many other structures have, especially ones that have been built recently, have really, you know, stretched the envelope to the max. And I think back about all the time I spent reviewing all the documents and the history to how do we get this? And of course, we didn't do anything here. We inherited most of what we have. All the parcels and everything about our town was given to us when we formed in '89. And then we get to a spot where now we have areas that are, you know, 120 feet deep, 40 feet wide, and the intention was that we have a minimum of this setback and a minimum of this front set and the minimums on the sides. And so houses and beach cottages were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 80s. And now it is, what is the maximum structure that can fit? 4 feet setback from the block wall. Now, which side of the wall? How many inches? Now, I'm allowed to kick out a fireplace. I won't be able to get a wheelbarrow through that side. Okay, I can do it on this side. To the back, and if there's any way to change or improve the position of the property Somebody will say, I need drainage. So they'll elevate the back 30 inches, which basically elevates the whole building pad, which gives them the 30 inches over the balcony of whoever's next door. It's getting really ridiculous. There may not be, we've already identified a strong deficit in your ability to understand the need of parking. You have no clue what the parking needs are. As time rolls forward, these documents are going to show that we have inadequate areas. So we'll be allowing 3, 4, 5 bedrooms and 1 2-car garage. So this case is a story pole will shine a little light on the size of the structure. You still need to define and help everyone to know what are we trying to do in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Next speaker is Mr. Erkeneff.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council and staff, Rick Erkeneff, 45 years here in this wonderful town. I grew up in Niguel Shores, and in your staff report, you'll see that Niguel Shores has story polling. So as a lot of folks go through remodeling, the poles are up, you visually get to see it, neighbors can discuss, you can talk, and I think it's really beneficial. I most definitely support this coming in front of the council and hopefully having a great dialogue within the community. A couple projects that I have paid close attention to, one of which I peeled here, I'm sure you all know, Planning Area 4 within the HDCP. As an artist and a designer, I'd use my skills in Measure H. I could visually look and do a computer model, but unless those poles are floating out there in the breeze for a month, 28 days, whatever, the community doesn't really get it, and in the Measure H case, at the Shell station there, they were up for less than 24 hours or so. I think it's very important that we consider this. Again, our neighbors to the north in Laguna, they have that. Niguel Shores operates that in the residential zone. But when you look at these large projects, and in case of the Planning Area 4, their artist rendering actually did some very interesting tricks on foreshortening the front of the building. And if you didn't foreshorten that, you could expand that building and really get the scale of it and really understand what a 38-foot high wall is right along the sidewalk in that property of Planning Area 4, which, again, in my opinion, goes against the plan, but that's all done, dust is settled. But going forward, we have the Dana Point Harbor, and I believe, I talked to a land use lawyer, that there will be at least one LCP amendment that comes through the city. So we really have to consider, or you have to consider, what's at stake here, no pun intended. But the harbor's one. We have a lot of other areas within town. There's other hotels that are going to be considered. But I really do believe that it's a great visual tool for the community to be able to see what potentially is going to be coming there, as Ms. Lewis said, prior to any decisions being made, and then allow for the dialogue to happen and allow for, sometimes unfortunately the chamber to fill with folks that they can weigh in on, and so that these type of decisions aren't made in an empty chamber and, you guys look out and say, well, there's nobody really interested in this until it's too late. So I support this. Hopefully it will pass, and you guys have your work cut out for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Erkeneff. With that, I will close public comments and bring it back to the council. Do I hear any motion?
I will motion that we take the recommended action of directing staff to write a story pearl ordinance and return it to the council for review and approval no later than the third Tuesday of October 2018.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Yes, I will second that motion, and I will augment just by saying that I have spoken with Mr. Denny about this date, the third Tuesday of October. So that's how the third Tuesday of October came about.
Mr. Mayor. If I may, just to be clear, when Councilmember Lewis and I talked about this, what we talked about was state law requires that the Planning Commission review and approve zoning ordinances before your council approve them. It was the council member's desire to see it come back to the council to make sure it was in a form and format and substance consistent with what she's trying to accomplish. So what I had suggested was that staff could certainly take a first crack at drafting it. It would have to come back to the council to make sure it was in form and substance what she was looking to accomplish, but then it would have to go to the Planning Commission for their review and consideration, again, to comply with state law in order for it to be adopted as a zoning ordinance in the city. So I just wanted to make that clear, and Matt and Patrick can chime in on that as well, if you like.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wyatt, any discussion?
So a couple of things. I mean, just in general, right, as a city, you know, when we were doing strategic planning, among other things, I looked at, you know, why we have such a wonderful city. It came down, I mean, much of it comes down to the fact that we, you know, we have a 6.5 miles of coastline and sort of this amphitheater geography or topology that, you know, slopes down toward that coastline. And then, you know, add a Mediterranean climate and you have a great place to live. But it's that basically the terrain here that sets it up so that many, many, many people who live here have and appreciate that, you know, ocean and coastline view. Now, and are very interested in knowing when we impact it. It comes up in virtually every building discussion at some form. So putting together the tools to allow them to really understand what they are seems like just a logical step for our city that, you know, with so much, so many views and so much interested in beautiful views to do. Secondly, I was at a review with the Planning Commission a few weeks ago where there was a project being rolled out to consider for a multi-unit building and on a hillside, and there was a large number of people in the audience to try to see, and the architects and developers had done a rather amazing job of trying to put together you know, views from every point and how it fit into the hillside, what it would look like from the various angles, above, below, you know, what it would impact, how, you know, and so forth. And in the end, it turned out to win everybody over. But it's very difficult to, as you watched and said in discussion, for people to understand if you're going to build, you know, in this case, you know, 30 or 40 units that sits between you and the ocean views, that it's not going to suddenly be in your face. And so it took a lot of effort in different ways, and they actually had some terrific graphic tools where they could spin the thing around and look at it from different angles that helped. We can't do that every time. I think the idea, had they been able to story pull it, and you would have realized how it nestled up in the hillside, and they took advantage of the slope to, you know, increase their, you know, the way they fit in, that it would have been a non-discussion as it was ultimately in the end. So I think this is something that just makes sense. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't do it. It's a very common technique. Architects and builders expect it, and it just seems like it makes sense. So.
Thank you. Other discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this came up to us once before. Councilmember Lewis wanted to take a look at story polling, and we've already sent it down to the Planning Commission, and they considered it on May 14th. And I'm going to read something that came out of the Planning Commission. It said, May 14th meeting, the Planning Commission did not recommend the proposed story poll ordinance. Instead, recommended reviewing additional notification options. Story Pole Ordinance Discussion Summary, the benefits, transparency, and early notice to neighbors. Concerns, limited application, town center requires story polling, any changes require a citywide vote. 76 HOAs, many require written notice and story polling already. Therefore, a large number of Dana Point properties already require story polling with the limited application to the remaining properties. Applicability to view blockage, there's no Dana Point legal ordinance to prevent view blockage. 95% of story poll issues in HOAs relate to view blockage. Number 3, projects meeting zoning requirement. Planning Commission and City Council are legally required to approve projects that meet existing zoning requirements, i.e. Via Verde project proposed by neighbors but met the zoning. The cost, additional cost to homeowners seeking to improve their property, additional cost to the city to enforce installation, maintenance, and removal. Number 5, better options to notify and inform neighbors. Electronic notifications are more effective, faster, and less costly. Technology can improve the visualization of proposed projects. So this has already been discussed down there, and they hit it right on the head. The majority of this, a large portion of the city is already in HOAs. Most of them have story polling requirements when you're going to do building. And, you know, there are a lot of people that live in this community and they don't want to live in HOAs for these very reasons. You have building codes already. You have zoning codes. You know how high you can go. If I'm a prospective landowner and I want to come in and I can say, this is what I want to buy this property, I want to build this building on it, and I've looked at my zoning requirements and my building requirements, I know what I can put on there. That creates uncertainty when you say, oh, wait a minute, we're going to make you story poll it, and the community's going to get input. And they could change what you can actually build, which would reduce your building ability. So, you know, I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, I understand it. I happen to live in an HOA where they do have story polling requirements. We have them. I choose to live in that HOA because I get those types of protections, and we actually protect views in our HOA. The city doesn't do it. So I'm not exactly sure what story polling does when you don't have a view ordinance, and you have building codes that, you know, if the city were to decide, no, we're not going to allow you to build that, but it falls within the code, we could have a legal issue as well. So, I mean, that needs to be taken into consideration. A lot of this stuff sounds really good on the surface, and it would say, okay, that could work. But the reality are there are always other downfalls and pitfalls that you need to be aware of, and I don't think we're taking those into consideration. So, you know, I think it's already been considered down there. I think we're wasting our time trying to write something, sending it down that they're going to, you know, recommend against.
Thank you. I guess I just want to say I feel like we've been here before because we had this come before us and we sent it down to the Planning Commission. Now, if I understand what's going to happen, if we do bring this back, we're going to have to send it back down to the Planning Commission again. And why would we expect a different result? I just, you know, it puzzles me why we would be here again considering this after all the reasons that Mayor Pro Tem Miller brought up, and it's already been considered by the Planning Commission. So, you know, that's my question. I guess I'll ask it to the city manager. Please explain to me what would be different this time if we sent it down.
Well, this is being proposed by Councilmember Lewis, so I may need to reference her and let her speak for herself. I think the only potential difference is when she proposed this earlier, I think we looked at the Laguna Beach ordinance as part of a larger view protection ordinance. In this case, staff would be asked to look specifically at just a story pole requirement, not a view protection ordinance. So it's, while the end result may seem similar, the actual text of the ordinance would likely be much different.
Okay, thank you. Other comments in light of this?
Well, I read the Planning Commission too, and I actually found them relatively inconsistent and worrisome in that regard. So I think it's worth a look. I mean, basically what they're saying is many, if not most, of our homeowners are already protected, so we don't care about the rest of them. That's just a small number. I think that HOAs have them in other groups because they find that they're the appropriate thing to do. And as the city looks at consistency and policies on doing things, saying yes, those same things that that are required to many of our residents are in fact good ideas that we as a city should actually make requirements for all of our residents. So I found that argument to be just fundamentally wrong in my view, and I think it needs further discussion.
Okay. Councilmember Thompson?
Yeah, so I guess I have a procedural question. So we would get this ordinance back and see if it passes muster with what Councilmember Lewis had in mind, and then it goes back to the Planning Commission for their input and they would vote on it, whether if they like the ordinance or if they didn't like the ordinance, then that would move back to the City Council if it was approved by Planning Commission.
In essence, that's the process, yes.
Okay. So we're not having a final say on it at this point. The Planning Commission, who's probably more skilled than planning objectives than we are, would get a look at it and they'd get to take their view on it and see what they think.
Well, they get to look at it and make a recommendation, and then they have to have the process for a zoning ordinance is that it has to go through the Planning Commission first. They make a recommendation, then it comes to the City Council for a public hearing, and if the council can accept, modify, or reject their recommendations. But there's some provisions that come into play if you do things that they didn't consider, that has to go back potentially to the Planning Commission. But this is just the normal process for any zoning ordinance. It's not typically something that would come through the council first, but there's no prohibition against that.
Okay, thank you.
The comments?
Could I just add, just for clarification, that the zoning ordinance is part of our local coastal program. So when we brought it back to council for final adoption, it would be a local coastal program amendment as well.
Okay. Other comments? Councilmember Lewis?
Yes. So when we're talking about that, we have a zoning code, and if it has this much setback and, it meets all those zoning codes, we have to agree to it. Well, that's not true. We also have part of our code that says that there is discretion, that it fit within the character of the neighborhood. That's not only in our codes, it's in our design criteria that the codes incorporate. So it's not cut and dry that, you've got your 4 feet over here, your 6 feet over here, and your 12 feet up here, you're fine. There's nothing we can do about it. So this is a tool to help everyone visualize, does it not only meet the zoning requirements, but does it meet our design requirements that are incorporated into our code? And our code says that, does this fit within the character of the neighborhood? And I think that gets lost as something that we don't have discretion, and I think we need to consider that we do, because our residents are asking us to use that discretion. And I have to concur with Councilmember Wyatt's comments. I went to that Planning Commission meeting where they heard from the residents and then had the discussion. There was not even the least bit of discussion about the ordinance itself. And, maybe we could tweak this, maybe we could change that, which I suggested. I said, what are your specific issues? They didn't even want to hear it. It was, well, I think almost all of them, except maybe 1 or 2, said, well, I live in an association and we have to have these things. So, most of us have it. And I got that same feeling that you had, Mr. Wyatt, as well. The rest of you, it's just too damn bad. And one person actually said, we're just going to have a city full of sticks, and that's going to be ugly. Okay. I think you drive through neighborhoods, you drive through Laguna Beach, they have story polling. It's nothing out of the ordinary, and I think we need to consider that helping the residents and using our discretion is something that we have made a lower priority than we should. And so I am looking for this to be a tool to help the resident, as Mr. Gardner and Mr. Erkeneff said, that it would be helpful, and as seconding Mr. Wyatt, that we do have discretion, and I'd like the Planning Commission to look at it in that light. And this is more than just view. I mean, you know, this is mass, scope, scale, bulk. That's what our code says. And we sat there for over an hour with Villa Verde saying, oh, well, what does that mean? What is mass? What is scope? What is bulk? And had we just had the thing there, you know, I think we wouldn't have had that whole discussion, and 40 people wouldn't have shown up going, you know, this is huge, you know. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I disagree with Mr. White's comment that, oh, too bad for the rest of you. You know, there are a lot of people that don't want to live in HOAs for this very reason. They don't want somebody telling them what they can and can't do on their property. There are people that want to live there because they do protect views. All right? And so to make the assumption, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't affect enough people. Well, there are large masses of people that don't show up here and are very adamant, especially down in the Capitol Beach area, that, listen, I live here for a reason. I talk with these guys all the time. I don't want to be in an HOA. I don't want people telling me what I can and can't do on my property other than what I'm allowed to do by the city. And so, you know, without a view ordinance, and I understand what Ms. Lewis just said about mass and scale, but without a view ordinance, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't fit with the fabric of the community. That's a very slippery slope. If we're going to go down that path, we need to start taking a look at our building codes and our zoning codes and say, if that's what we're trying to do, then that's what we should be looking at, instead of saying, you know, on this one we don't like it, but this one it's okay. And how do things change then? If I own the property and I know what I'm allowed to build on it, you know, and I always, and maybe I'm naive at this, but I try to be a good neighbor. I've been in neighborhoods where I've had people build in front of me, and I've said, listen, you know, it's gonna kind of screw up my view here. Come look from my house so you can see it. And every time I've done that, they've been very amenable. Oh my God, I didn't realize. Let's take a look and make some adjustments to it. All right, that can happen, but when you start throwing this, you know, you start going directly to the city and you don't work directly with them, you can actually get people to stand up and say, no, I'm going to build as big as I can. Now, I don't know how you deal with that other than changing the building code and what's allowed on your property. Story polling does not prevent that. And so, you know, if you're going to start using, we have this little clause in our municipal code that allows us to do that. I got to tell you, that's a slippery slope if you're going to start using that every single time, because you have a story poll up and we don't like what that looks like. I'm just telling you, that's a dangerous, dangerous road to go down. I can see a lot of lawsuits coming up about that. And how much money does the city want to spend on legal fees? Because it could happen. And if I look at it as a taking, when a taking happens, it's not just the value of the property, it's the value of what you could put on the property. Okay? It's what I've understood. I've had that explained to me before, that they can go that far. So $1 million piece of dirt could cost the city $3 million because they lost what they could have put on it. It's just a dangerous, slippery slope, and without a view ordinance, I don't really see the value in this. Now, you know, I may be in the minority on this one, but I just think we're going down a slippery slope with this.
Thank you. I'll just add, I'm not persuaded by the argument that because an HOA, some of our HOAs have it, we need to extend it citywide. I mean, if we're going to apply every HOA regulation citywide, I wouldn't support that. I think it was explained well and said well by Mayor Pro Tem Miller that when you live in an HOA, you're opting into those rules. Now, if you decide that you want to live outside of an HOA, you don't want those rules. You know, there are reasons people live in areas that are not HOAs. And, you know, we're not doing them any favors by telling them, well, the HOAs do things this way, so we're going to impose this on you citywide. So I'm not persuaded by that argument that some of the HOAs do this, so we should extend it citywide. So again, we've been here before. I'm not sure how the result is going to be any different if we move forward with this. But those are my comments. Before I call for the vote, I'll go around one more time and see if there's any last comments. Anything?
Well, I've gone back and forth on this one in my mind tonight after hearing public testimony and some of the comments up here. It's a tough decision. So, and I see both sides of the argument. I'm just having a tough time deciding which is the best for them.
Okay, Councilman Wyatt?
Well, I'm going to respond to what Councilmember Mueller said. I think he, in fact, said exactly the correct reason for doing it. So, on Via Verde, one we brought up, which we had a long discussion on, the original architecture that was proposed by the project there had a lot of mass and bulk at the front, and our community development, our department building worked with them at some other architecture. In fact, they thanked us during the presentation for ideas about how they could change things and actually reduce that to have less impact. And so there was a fair amount of back and forth on that project. They weren't required to do that. What they had proposed initially fit within the building code. But in terms of other ideas that could fit within the building code, still get them what they want, and be better neighbors in the project, they made changes to the project. Councilmember Miller said he's had his neighbors come over and he showed them what it looked like from his house, and they've made changes. That's exactly what a story poll is made to do. So you can invite them over and say, look at it from my place, and maybe ideas can come up to say, if we move this or change that or set that back slightly differently, you know, I'll be a better neighbor, and you won't throw things over the wall at me, you know, after I'm done. So the purpose is exactly that, which is to be able to hold a conversation to somebody. We are not proposing that we actually change any ordinances here and force them to build lower. I mean, we, in your view about the slippery slope and the building, when we were dealing with Via Verde and the various arguments back and forth about whether we should or shouldn't allow that project, whether they story polled it or not didn't change the ordinance than what we decided to do, and we still could have said no to that project, which was within the zoning ordinance and had the same exposure. So anytime a project comes to us, unless it violates the building code significantly in a very specific way, you know, you run the risk of having it appealed and come back. So all this does is allow a conversation about visual impact and the possibility that somebody will make changes in order to reduce the impact, in order to be a good neighbor. I mean, that's ultimately where you end up out of this. And I think actually within the HOAs generally they may restrict it, but mostly in there it's the same thing, which is how you get two neighbors next to each other to get along better by being able to have that discussion.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis? Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Yeah, one more comment. Again, story polling is for view blockage. That's what it's designed for. That's in the HOAs. That's what it's designed for. That's why the only reason it happened with me is my neighbor happened to be walking by. He didn't live near me. I went to my HOA and I filed my concern, and they basically ignored it. The homeowner didn't even know I had a concern. And so the story polls were down when I ran into them, and then went and had the conversation with them. And so, listen, this is something that I'm just not sure. My concern is we're going to start getting into view ordinances. Dana Point doesn't do that. Is that something we need to do? I don't know. It's not something that's high on my priority list right now to do a building view ordinance, because I know what can go in front of me when I buy a house. I do my research. I figure out what can be there, how high it can go. I don't know. I mean, I just think we've been down this road. It came back. The Planning Commission has already recommended no, and I don't know why we're going down it again.
Okay, thank you. With that, we got a motion and a second.
One more.
One more comment.
Yes, sir, sorry.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
So if this does pass tonight, then it goes, staff will draft a report and a possible ordinance. That'll go to the Planning Commission for their review, and they will vote on it at that point. They will not vote on it at that point.
I think the motion was for it to come back to council on October 3rd.
And then do we vote on that ordinance at that point?
Yes.
No, we do vote on that ordinance.
Yes.
Only to
Well,
send it to Planning
you'd vote to
Commission.
send it to Planning Commission. You wouldn't be voting to adopt the
And
ordinance.
then they'd have their crack at it at that point.
Correct.
So really, this is merely to ask to revisit the issue, to see what Planning Commission feels about something different than what they've seen before. I understand Councilmember Miller's and the mayor's point of view, and I tend to believe that too. If the Planning Commission's already decided it, but now I'm leaning towards, well, maybe we do let them have another crack at it. Not saying whether I support it or not, but let some other experts look at it, and people that are, planning types, let them look at it, let them review it, and see what there is. I can't make a decision right now whether it's a good idea or not, but I would be in favor of sending it to maybe the Planning Commission to have them look at it again. If it doesn't pass muster then again, then so be it. That's all I have, sorry.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will call for the vote. Okay, that passes 3-2. All right, that was the final agenda item. That would bring us to our staff reports. Mr. City Manager, do you have a staff report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, briefly, while summer is now officially over, interestingly, I think September is probably the busiest month in Dana Point. And so I just wanted to encourage folks that may be watching at home to take a look at the September calendar that's on the city website. Just click on calendar at the top. A couple of events that I wanted to point out, one of which is not on our calendar, but we're going to fix that tomorrow. But one is on September 15th is California Coastal Cleanup Day. There will actually be 3 different events going on in Dana Point, one at Ocean Institute, one at Salt Creek Beach, and a third down at Doheny. And for those that go and do the Doheny event, that's going on at the same time that the Doheny Longboard Surfing Association's Dale Velzy Classic and Luau is going on at Doheny. And that's the event that's not currently on our website, but will be, as this will be the 29th annual Velzy Classic. That event is old as this city is. So just wanted to make note of that for the council and for those watching at home. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, and this may be a formality, but I believe I forgot to ask you if you had anything to report out of closed session. Maybe you can make that part of your report if you do.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we do not have any reportable items from closed session this evening. And just as an update to the council and the community, the California Bureau of Cannabis Control has been looking at some revised regulations dealing with kind of the fallout, so to speak, of Prop 64 on legalized marijuana use. And one of the issues that has come up is whether or not delivery can occur in any city, regardless of what the city thinks about it. It's an issue that we had talked about early on with these regulations. The way that the actual statute reads, you cannot prevent someone from using your public roadways for delivery purposes, but you can prevent, as a city, someone from delivering within your city. And our current ordinances read that way. The regulations that are being proposed would undo that. Some comments have been submitted to the state on behalf of the city, kind of pointing out those inconsistencies between the state statutes and the proposed regulations. So it's just an issue to watch. It's something that we suspect down the road could end up in some significant litigation, whether it's our city or some other cities or a group of cities. It's hard to say, but just kind of an FYI.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the adjournment part of our meeting. Before we adjourn, I have some sad news to report. One of our leading citizens, Janie Robb, she has served on the Arts and Culture Commission for 4 years. Sadly, recently lost her husband. And I want to extend the condolences and thoughts and prayers of the city to Miss Robb. And accordingly, I'd like to adjourn tonight's meeting in the memory of Jeannie's husband, James Robb. Thank you. We're adjourned.